Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, and we are live today at Bridgestone Arena, where somebody has screwed up all of the controls. Here at Bridgestone Arena, David is in for Ian. Hello, David.
What's going on?
Hey, I'm going to try to punch some buttons here, see if this changes things. This is not, something's off here. Give me 1 second. David, talk to the people.
All right, what's up, everyone? This is David here. So exactly, the Titans, man, they're just, I don't know how else to explain the Titans. Hopefully they draft Cam Ward over Shadur Sanders, or else we're going to get some great memes from Jared Stillman, which that right there would be funny in itself. But, again, though, the Titans, they just need a lot of different things this offseason. Hopefully they address some things in the draft. But, I guess Jared's right back.
What'd you tell the people?
I just talked about, Cam Ward. They need to draft Cam Ward, the Titans, and then, they have a few more things they need to do in the draft.
So those are some good takes, David. I didn't hear them, but I'm sure they were wonderful. The SEC tournament, I guess, came in through here at Bridgestone Arena. They take over the whole arena, and including Barrel House, even decorated our desk. And now the controls don't work and it smells like vomit over here. So other than that, thank you to the SEC. Okay, so I want to start on the mock drafts that have come out. By the way, David in for Ian today. Hello, David.
What's going on again?
Good stuff. Okay, so the mock drafts came out. I cannot believe that NFL Network and ESPN had their mock drafts come out at the exact same time today. Usually they kind of stagger them, and look, there's 15 mock drafts for ESPN and there's 15 mock drafts for NFL Network, but there's two guys, one at each network, that matter the most. For the NFL Network, we know it's Daniel Jeremiah. For the ESPN, we know it's Mel Kiper Jr. Those are the main guys, the lead draft analysts. And they both had mock drafts come out this morning. And they both, surprise, surprise, have the Titans taking Cam Ward with the number 1 pick. Both Mel Kiper Jr. and Daniel Jeremiah. At this point, if you put out a mock draft and you didn't have Cam Ward at number 1 to the Titans, personally, I'd look at you sideways. I'd say, who do you think it's going to be? Who do you think is going to play quarterback for the Titans? But here's what we haven't really talked about. I said yesterday, this idea that, oh my God, I think it kind of looks like the Titans are taking Cam Ward. I don't get there faster. 2 weeks ago, Kaharski reported the Titans would not be interested in Sam Darnold, that they'd be more interested in, Mac Jones or Jameis Winston. Those aren't starting quarterback options. Those are backup quarterback options, and they're backup quarterback options for Cam Ward. And I said that day, okay, well, if they're not in on Sam Darnold, congratulations to Cam Ward. He's the number 1 overall pick. And yet at this point, there are still people that are like, are you sure? Are you sure they're not trying to work out a trade with the Giants? Are you sure that? Yes, I'm sure. The Jets overpaid Justin Fields, who sucks. The Raiders traded for Geno Smith. Why? Because they figure we're not going to draft a quarterback this year, so we might as well get one. You're not running it back with Will Levis, folks. So now that we can make the assumption that Cam Ward is going to be the number 1 pick and the starting quarterback of the 2025 Tennessee Titans, there's one element of this that we haven't talked about. And that's what I want to get to. So some of you may be driving around right now. Some of you may be thinking to yourself that there's a chance, an outside chance, a remote possibility, maybe a realistic possibility that Cam Ward's not the pick with the number 1 choice for the Titans. He's the pick. He's the quarterback. So can I further the discussion a little bit, or do we still have to go over breadcrumbs of proving what we already know is true? So let's say Cam Ward is the pick. How do the Titans build a team around him? Because I do want to note that a lot of these quarterbacks, they go in the Hall of Fame themselves, right? Like Dan Fouts is a Hall of Famer. Dan Fouts accomplished it. Dan Fouts' team doesn't go in the Hall of Fame. He goes in the Hall of Fame. But for the most part, when it comes to quarterback success, at least in my lifetime, which is this generation of the NFL, I think it's very rare for the quarterback to do it himself. I don't think Patrick Mahomes and the ascent that he had was an accident. Was Patrick Mahomes a great talent? Absolutely. He threw for 5,000 yards in college football. But he also had Andy Reid as his coach. He had Eric Fisher, the former number 1 overall pick at left tackle. He had Tyreek Hill, the fastest wide receiver. Travis Kelce, a future Hall of Fame tight end. He learned under Alex Smith. That is a situation that is very conducive for success for a young quarterback. And in my lifetime of watching football, which is about 1998 on, 2 quarterbacks, Peyton Manning and Joe Burrow, have gone to awful organizations simply because they had the number 1 overall pick with awful owners and turned them into winners. Those are the only 2. Not Lamar Jackson, not Patrick Mahomes, not Josh Allen, whose Buffalo Bills made the playoffs the year before he got there, not Aaron Rodgers, who sat on the bench behind Brett Favre. Again, awful organizations, awful owners. Peyton Manning shows up, everything's different in Indianapolis. Joe Burrow shows up, everything's different in Cincinnati. And the second Joe Burrow leaves Cincinnati, goes back to being Cincinnati. The second Peyton Manning left the Colts, went back to being the crappy Colts. So if they've made the decision that Cam Ward is the pick, then are the Titans in position to put a successful environment around the young quarterback whom they're about to use the number 1 pick and invest $30 million into? So I went through kind of each core element here. Number 1, ownership. Amy Adams Strunk. Again, I hate to say this because I think Amy's a good person, and I do believe that she cares about the Titans just like I care about the Titans, but she is a terrible owner. She's got to stay out of the way. And I just don't know if I can believe that when push comes to shove, look, it'd be great if everybody won every game, but that when times get tough, I just cannot believe that Amy Adams Strunk is going to stay out of the way and stay out of Chad Brinker's way, which again is another part of the problem that this guy's in charge. She doesn't know football. She clearly doesn't know how to build a team. She doesn't know how to hire the right people. I already don't like the fact that she forced Chad Brinker to keep Brian Callahan if Chad Brinker didn't want to keep Brian Callahan, which is what I've been told, and then thus puts her head coach, Callahan, on the hot seat to draft a quarterback with the first overall pick, which I think is never a good idea. So that's the first thing. Ownership has to change. Now, if you told me that ownership was going to hand the keys to Brinker and get out of the way, I'd say there's a better chance of that being successful, though I am not a Brinker believer. There is a better chance of that being successful than there is of Amy being around. Number 2, the coach. Pretty important. Brian Callahan, last year, fans, myself included, thought he had the chops to be a guru coach. Tight pants, latte, play sheet, etc. I didn't know if he was or wasn't going to be the next Sean McVay or the next Kyle Shanahan, but I knew Mike Vrabel wasn't. When it came to developing a quarterback, bringing along a young guy, I knew it wasn't going to be Vrabel that would have success doing it. And at that point in time, the Titans had a young quarterback. Well, in year 1 under Brian Callahan, the young quarterback absolutely bombed. The team regressed, and now a lot of people are down on Callahan, again, myself included. And I worry the reason that I don't think Callahan will be a good coach is not because he doesn't know ball or not because he doesn't understand offense or things like that. I don't care about him calling the plays. I worry that Brian Callahan doesn't have the ability to hold the club accountable. I don't like his assistant coaches outside of his father and Bones Fossil. And again, I think he gives everybody, players, coaches, anybody, the benefit of the doubt. I do not think he's enough of a bad cop, which is what I think he needs to be. Number 3, the offensive line. They have 2 durable starting tackles. Check. 2 starting guards. Check. Center is kind of a question because Lloyd Cushenberry's coming off an injury and because Cushenberry might not be very good. But for right now, I'll give it a check. So the offensive line's actually in okay shape. Offensive talent. Again, this is to surround Cam Ward for success. Calvin Ridley is a good number 2 wide receiver. Tony Pollard is fine. He's not Derrick Henry, and I'm not sure Tony Pollard can be a workhorse back. And I think they need Tony Pollard and another guy, really running the ball. And Spears is not that guy. But the thing that actually really drives me nuts about the Titans, that worries me when it comes to Cam Ward and it comes to building a team around Cam Ward so that they can have success, is that in order for young quarterbacks to thrive, I really feel like the Titans are going to need more weapons for the quarterback. Not veteran weapons, but kind of younger, faster, speed weapons at receiver. And they're going to need a better tight end. And the two tight ends they've had for the last couple of years. And it's like, no, we think these guys can do it. And I'm telling you, they can't do it. There's a reason why the last 2 years with these guys as your two tight ends, you've won a combined 9 games. Tight end's important, especially for a young quarterback. And last year, they didn't get Will Levis a tight end. And then finally, the defense. I think defense is important for a young quarterback because if my defense is consistent and gives my team a win, I'm not asking for the 85 Bears. But if your defense is consistent at getting pressure, forcing turnovers, not giving up big plays, you're asking your young quarterback to go out there and score 19 points instead of 23. And that's a big difference. That's an extra possession. That's an extra touchdown. Where at the end of the game, instead of we're down 4 and we got to drive the length of the field and score a touchdown, now we're down 2. We got to drive 38 yards and kick a field goal. And quite frankly, I think the Titans defense stinks. I thought they stunk last year. And as of right now, I actually think it is worse than it was last year. They cut their leading sacker in Harold Landry, who had 9 sacks last year. I'm fine with that. But they've replaced him with Draymond Jones, who had 4. They traded their leading tackler from a year ago. Again, I don't think that's a big loss in Kenneth Murray, and I don't have a problem with that. But they need to replace him. And I don't see, if you use the number 1 pick on Cam Ward, I don't see how they acquire premium defensive talent without using the 35th pick on it. So now I need a speed receiver. I need another tight end. And now I've got to use the 35th pick on a defensive player because outside of Jeffrey Simmons, I don't have any premium defensive talent. And no, a run-stuffing nose tackle does not count as a premium talent. And then there's the defensive coach. I thought Denard Wilson stunk last year. And I think the Titans only had the second-ranked defense in the NFL because the defense and special teams were the offense and special teams were so bad last year, whether it was Will Levis turning the ball over or the Titans allowing Khalif Raymond to run back punts or the Titans getting punts blocked or whatever, that they were so bad that they had so many short fields. So the Titans defense didn't give up a bunch of yards since every game was already out of reach and Will Levis was just handing the other team points, as were your special teams. So by my calculation, let's say the pick is Ward. Again, I think it's Ward. I've guaranteed it's Ward. And Ian last week said with 40% certainty it would be Cam Ward. I have to believe that number's up now. If it's Cam Ward, do you think he can succeed with the problems the Titans have at owner, coach, offensive skill talent, tight end, and defense? So maybe instead of worrying about who's going to be the pick or what we think of Cam Ward, again, I'm not the biggest Cam Ward believer. And I think most people, I'm not talking about you people, but I'm talking about most people, I think most people would believe that Cam Ward is not Peyton Manning or Joe Burrow as a prospect. Again, the rare guy who is so good and such a leader and so talented and so tough and so that he takes bad coaches or bad owners or bad general managers and can work through their ineptitude. And if that's the case, then maybe Cam can do it, but I don't think he is. So in order for him to be successful, the Titans have to get better at owner, coach, tight end, defense, and maybe a speed receiver. Unless you want to argue that he's Manning or Burrow. So let's figure out how to fix that first. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Now, there is one thing that Cam Ward is apparently, reportedly, there's no way for me or you to actually know this for sure, but there is apparently one thing Cam Ward's doing, and we'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Cam Ward, and Cam Ward. I think the most impressive part about the combine, Dan, was what the University of Miami offensive lineman and teammates said about Cam Ward. I'm a big believer in life is who you really are is how you treat people that can help you. Cam Ward was a selfless leader. He has what it takes. I think his intangibles are off the charts, and they shouldn't answer the phone if someone calls him.
Okay, that was Mike Tannenbaum, former NFL general manager, and Mike Tannenbaum is on ESPN. That was on the Dan Patrick Show, though. But Tannenbaum, again, is like, what would you do if you thought Cam Ward? And it was the intangibles and the way he treated his teammates and everything his teammates said about him and everything at Miami. And we need to keep something in mind with Tannenbaum. David, do you know where Mike Tannenbaum lives?
I do not.
Mike Tannenbaum lives in Miami. If you remember, he was the general manager of the Jets, and then he went to the Dolphins, and he was the president of football operations, kind of like Chad Brinker when they had Ryan Tannehill at quarterback and those teams. And so Tannenbaum lives in Miami. And Tannenbaum is telling you, hey, just the way he led that team, the way those guys talk about him, the way that Cam Ward, and this does align with what I am starting to hear about Cam Ward. This does align with something that I said was a big deal when I watched the Cam Ward tape. It's hilarious because, again, I'll talk about how Rick Spielman compares Cam Ward to Tyrod Taylor. That says he's a better version of Tyrod Taylor. And these Titan fans that have already made up their mind that he's the next Mahomes will say, watch the tape, Jared. You don't understand. You don't know. And it's like, no. I've watched the tape. I know what Cam Ward did on the football field at Miami this year. I watched it. I watched the tape. So, oh no, Jared, you don't understand. You got it. No. I understand. But the one thing I wrote in my notes when I watched the tape was I said, hey, if I were the Titans, if I was a general manager, and I was allowed these interview sessions like they get at the combine, like they get on the top 30 visit, where they can sit down with him and go over the board with him and they can sit there and they can quiz him on things. My guess is one of the reasons they had Cam Ward so close to the combine was they probably told him stuff at the combine they wanted him to remember when they met up with him a week later. Kind of like, if I tell you something on Wednesday, will you remember it on Sunday? And it sounds like after TD talked with us on Thursday during the Power Hour last week, the Titans were wowed by Cam Ward in the meetings. Jim Miller and Pat Kerwin from SiriusXM NFL Radio, they host Moving the Chains. I listened to their interview with Cam Ward. They were gaga for Cam Ward after they talked to him. And that was one interview. Again, Mike Tannenbaum's kind of hinting at that. And I've said, I don't think that Cam Ward is going to be Peyton Manning or Joe Burrow. To me, those are the two guys who have gone to horrendous organizations with bad ownership, like the kind of can't get out of their own way owners, and have elevated the entire program. Peyton Manning, they were 13-3 in year 2. Joe Burrow, they were in the Super Bowl. I mean, just think about it like this. If it wasn't for Joe Burrow, do you think the Bengals would have paid 2 receivers north of $100 million the other day? Of course not. Do you think they would have built an indoor practice facility? No. They didn't do those things for Andy Dalton. Again, elevating the entire organization. They're the only two. Cam has to be that guy because the Titans right now, hate to say it, look in the mirror, are a terrible organization. Bad ownership. Again, what do we think of this coach? Does anybody trust Brinker, Borgonzi? The jury's out on. I mean, I got Titan fans, the boohoo crew that's like, he helped the Chiefs win 3 Super Bowls, Jared. Yeah, and so did Chris Ballard and Ryan Poles. How are they doing? Exactly. So I say all of this to say that one thing that both Manning and Burrow have, and Brady has it too, but Brady didn't go to a bad organization. The one thing that Manning and Burrow absolutely have is they are the leaders amongst leaders. Ed Orgeron told a story on Colin Cowherd's podcast that when Joe Burrow went on his recruiting visit to LSU as a transfer at Ohio State, Joe Burrow told Ed Orgeron, I don't want to do any recruiting stuff. I just want to eat crawfish and talk football. That was it. Let's just get down to business. Get me some crawfish. Since I'm at LSU, I'm in Louisiana. Give me some crawfish and let's talk some ball. And Ed Orgeron said that after 5 minutes of Joe Burrow in the meeting room with all the LSU people, after 5 minutes, everybody in the room knew that Joe Burrow was the smartest guy there. Very few people have that type of cunning. I'm just going to call it how it is. Bill Polian, to this day, talks about the meetings that he had with Peyton Manning and how different it was talking to Peyton Manning than it was to Ryan Leaf. So the one thing I will say, when it comes to Cam Ward, is that it does sound like, just based on what, again, Tannenbaum said there, what TD said on Thursday, what we heard on Moving the Chains and all this, it does sound, I want to say Todd McShay said something similar, which was both Sanders and Ward are leaders, but apparently Ward might be at another level. And that would have a big impact on me if I was making the pick. And the one thing I'll say is I don't get access to Cam Ward like that because I'm not making the pick. The Titans do get that access. So the one thing, again, I know what I see in Cam Ward, which is a first-round talent. I'm not sure I see a franchise quarterback off of the tape. But if the leadership, if that's there in the meetings, if the just intellectual, cerebral ability, if that's there in the meetings, then that would change my opinion a little bit about doing this. If this was a guy that I just sat down with and I listened to him and I said, and I knew this is the guy, then you have to take him. And it does sound like there's a little bit of that with Cam Ward. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. And there is another pick in these mock drafts. Again, Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper Jr. put out their mock drafts that I'm just not sure it's this simple. We'll get to that in your phone. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game. Want to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I absolutely love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. No one wants to deal with a plumbing, HVAC, or electrical emergency, especially not me. And most of the time, you don't know what it'll cost, if it'll get fixed correctly, or if someone's just trying to sell you something. Well, that's why you need to be like me, and you need to use the pros at Hiller. When you call Hiller, their experts are going to solve all of your problems, and they're going to solve them quickly. With Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, the price you're paid is the price you'll actually pay. It's the price you're told. It's easy. No hidden fees or surprises on your bill. So be like me and book online right now at happyhiller.com. That's happyhiller.com.
Who do you project will be the better NFL quarterback? Is it Cam or Shador?
I'm going to go Shador Sanders. I'm going to be steadfast in that. I've had him number one, QB1 all along, really since last year, and love everything about the kid. I mean, if you say, well, he takes too many sacks. Yes, he has to get the ball out of tick faster, but he dealt with NFL conditions. Shannon, Stephen A., we talked about that. Who had to deal with what you're going to deal with in the NFL, what you're going to have to survive in the NFL? He survived hit after hit. How he did it, I don't know. He was 11 of 13 games this year at 70% or higher. He never completed less than 60% of his passes in a game. And in 2023, when he was getting pounded and getting sacked and getting hit time after time, he was at 69% and change with 27 touchdowns, 3 picks, 4 rushing touchdowns. That's 31-3 touchdown interception ratio. So to me, when you look at Shador, accuracy, slip and slide in the pocket. Yes, he can get you a 3rd and 8 first down. People say, well, he's going to run the 4.8s. Patrick Mahomes ran 4.8, 4.84. He doesn't have an explosive arm. Neither did Johnny Unitas, Peyton Manning. Okay, we talk about explosive arms. You know, you don't need to have that. Tom Brady, another one, didn't have the explosive arm or explosive legs at 5'2", 440. So you can win in the NFL, win big in the NFL, going about your business like Shador Sanders does. And that's why I have a problem with all these people say he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that. He's good enough in all areas, and he has the mindset to be great.
He has the mindset to be great, says Mel Kiper Jr. about Shador Sanders. Now, how would Mel Kiper Jr. know that? He has the mindset to be great. Has Mel sat down with Shador and done the, not only just the tape evaluations, but has Mel done the psychological evaluations, which, by the way, these teams do. When they bring you on the top 30 visit, I mean, you're meeting with everybody there, and they're watching everything, and they're talking about. Mel Kiper just took his pants off for Shador Sanders, saying Shador Sanders ahead of Cam Ward, and he's like, I mean, he's got all these things. I mean, look, Tom Brady wasn't the greatest player of all time. It's easy to do this when you take somebody's flaws and say, well, there's another quarterback who was successful that had the same flaw. Let's take me, for instance. I don't have a great arm. Well, neither does Brock Purdy. So I guess I can play quarterback in the NFL too. Oh, wait, I can't. But I say this because I am going to give Mel some credit. It feels like since the combine, the group think that covers the NFL and covers the NFL draft is of the belief now that Cam Ward is the best quarterback in this class and there is nobody else close. In fact, I saw Chris Sims put out there, Tier 1, Cam Ward, Tier 2, Shador Sanders and Jackson Dart. I'm like, oh, okay, good. There's some groupthink right there. That's what everybody else is saying. And Mel still to this day says he would take Shador Sanders over Cam Ward. I'm not going to be one of these people that does this because you people love to do this all the time, where you'll say something like, well, Mel liked Will Levis, so Mel liked Jimmy Clausen, so I don't care what Mel thinks. When I know that everyone's going to get some of these wrong. And again, the things that are the most important, kind of the mental evaluations you don't see on the tape. But I'm going to give Mel credit. Clearly, he believes in Shador Sanders. And this is the thing where when it was Burrow, when it was Luck, even when it was Lawrence, when it was that kind of prospect, Caleb last year, there wasn't this, the other guy might be better. And the other guy, again, the comparison Tim Hasselbeck made today for Shador Sanders, he said his upside was Andy Dalton, which is best case scenario, Shador can be Andy Dalton. That makes me nervous about Cam Ward. Somebody in the YouTube chat, though, says, Jared really wants Cam Ward. He's just afraid to be burned. Look, I wanted Sam Darnold. When they didn't sign Sam Darnold, which again is like a 1-year, $37 million contract. Florio broke that down at Pro Football Talk. When they did not sign Darnold, I said, okay, the choice is Ward. As if, this isn't what I would do, but this is the situation they're in. And if I was now put into the position they're in where Darnold's gone, it probably still would be, it would have to be Cam Ward. I wouldn't have a choice. Would I? Unless I'm Mel Kiper Jr. and I like Shador Sanders. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 737-1025 here on the program. One texter says, they said they wanted a generational talent, which does not equal Cam Ward. They said they want more top 100 picks, which does not equal Cam Ward. Draft gurus say what they want, but that's not what the Titans have said. Any chance that nobody has a clue since Diana Rossini must have moved to New England. So let me say this about the generational talent comment. I was in the room when Chad Brinker said it. Adam Schefter, who tweeted what Chad Brinker said, was not in the room. Now, as is most of the case with these press conferences, just because you weren't there or you weren't asking questions doesn't mean that you didn't hear what they said. But in this specific press conference, for whatever pansy reason, the Titans figured we don't want Chad Brinker on camera and we don't want any audio being disseminated from this availability. Again, it felt like a deposition and we had to sign an NDA. It was so weird. I've never seen this before. But in that room, Chad Brinker made the generational talent comments. I heard it. I was in the room. It was not a, hey, we want a generational talent and we're going to take them. It was, hey, we want more picks. Now, look, if there's a generational talent on the board, we're going to take the generational talent. But we are also thinking about the currency of the draft value. That is the context of which that was stated. All of a sudden, Adam Schefter, who didn't hear it, starts running around tweeting it, doing interviews in Boston, talking about that probably means the pass rusher at Penn State or the wide receiver / corner from Colorado. And I'm like, that's not what he said. What he said was, look, if Lawrence Taylor, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, but what he says is, if Lawrence Taylor's there, we're taking Lawrence Taylor. If Jonathan Ogden's there, we're taking Jonathan Ogden. It was not a, we are going to take a generational talent with this pick. They didn't say that. And it doesn't sound like any of these guys are generational talents. Blake Bedingfield wrote at Paul's website that he would not have taken Travis Hunter number 1 in last year's draft and would not have taken him number 1 in the draft before that. Again, generational talents. There's not that many generational talents out there. Jalen Ramsey is a very good NFL player. He is not a generational talent. Jerry Rice is a generational talent. Do you see the difference? Like, how many guys are really out there that are generational talents, slam dunk, no doubt, you know it. There's not that many. Aaron Donald, generational talent, but even coming out, people didn't know it. So I would say, hey, don't worry about what they say as far as the generational talent. Now, the top 100 picks thing is legit. Now, I don't see how you get all these picks if you don't trade this pick. And I do believe the Titans were horny to trade this pick at the very beginning of this process. And now it feels like either they haven't gotten the offers they wanted or they're in love with Cam Ward and they don't care anymore. Josh says, so what's your top 3 pick for the Titans in the NFL draft? Well, the Titans have the number 1 pick, and it's going to be Cam Ward. And if I ran the team, I think because there's no more veteran starting quarterbacks that are worth a crap to, as Mike Borgonzi would say, solidify the quarterback position, I think I probably would have to take Cam Ward. I wouldn't want to, but I'm not going to win 3 games this year and get fired. And if I run it back with Will Levis, that's exactly what's going to happen. And I'm not going to do that. One texter says, wow, what a turnaround. I texted this program on October 1st and said that I wanted Cam Ward no matter what. Then you complained for the last 30 days about how Ward ain't the guy, and now he might be something special. David, you've been doing this show this week. Has there been a turnaround in my tenor about Cam Ward?
No, none that I can tell.
I mean, saying that they're going to take him and that I want to take him are 2 totally different things. For me, and again, I know people don't want to hear this because the decision's been made, but for me, I would have signed Sam Darnold. I would have overpaid for Sam Darnold. I would have paid him $40 million on what was essentially a 2-year guaranteed contract. And I would have given him $40 million, and he'd be here, would be the quarterback of the Titans, and I would be trading the picks, and I would be picking up more picks, And I would be building a team around a veteran quarterback who I think you can win some games with. Do I think you can win the Super Bowl with him? Probably not. But again, I'm not sure that these guys are tier 1 quarterbacks either. So that's what I would have done. My opinion hasn't changed. It's just that's no longer an option. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to weigh in, that's 615-737-1025. There is a story that has come out that I am just, quite frankly, I'm kind of appalled by. I'm pretty shocked. I'm kind of appalled. And I would even argue I might be a little worried for this guy's well-being. We'll get to that coming up next. Hey, tune into later tonight, tune into 94.9 The Fan for Vandy Baseball as the Commodores host Belmont. Pregame begins at 5:45. First pitch is at 6 o'clock. And coverage is also available at 949thefan.com and on the 94.9 The Fan app. And as far as tonight, tune in to 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville. 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville for MTSU men's basketball in the NIT. As the Blue Raiders take on Chattanooga at 7 o'clock. The pregame starts at 6:30. Coverage also available on the Totally Hits Nashville app and at totallyhitsnashville.com. And I heard Willie say that Chip Walters texted him at MTSU and said $25 tickets. First come, first serve, and I believe it's less. I couldn't remember all I was driving, so I couldn't write down what Willie said, but I believe it's less for kids. But it's general admission, first come, first serve. Go fill up the Murphy Center, and let's see if MTSU can continue along in the NIT. So good luck to them. Stillman and Company, 102.5 Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, live at Bridgestone Arena. Preds fans, do not miss Smashville live tomorrow night at Brewhouse South in Franklin at 6 o'clock. See your Predator star players up close and personal. Also get autographs and pictures. Tomorrow night's guest will be Jonathan Marchessault. That's tomorrow night at Brewhouse South in Franklin. So we got to address this, because not only am I appalled, as I said, but this also is a little concerning at the same time. Has anybody seen the latest story involving Bill Belichick? So I'm not talking about the pictures with he and his girlfriend doing yoga on the beach, in which, again, seems like such an attention grab for Bill, which is not Bill's forte, which may be a part of the story. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking to this. Apparently, North Carolina, this isn't the NFL anymore where everything is private. The North Carolina is a public institution. That's how everybody knew that Bubba Cunningham, the athletic director at North Carolina, got a $100,000 bonus if UNC made the tournament, and he just happened to be the chair of the committee that decided that UNC should get into the tournament. People know this because it's a public institution, and so you can see contracts. You can also see communication, emails. It's called a FOIA request, the Freedom of Information Act. And so thus, when it comes to Tennessee and it comes to Kentucky and North Carolina, you can see that stuff. Vandy, not so much. But these other places, you absolutely can. And apparently, according to Matt Hartman of the AssemblyNC.com, Bill Belichick, via a FOIA request, they have obtained emails saying that Bill Belichick has asked North Carolina officials to copy his 24-year-old girlfriend on certain email messages sent to him. Although the copy, and I'm reading from Pro Football Talk on this, although the copy of the specific email posted by Hartman focuses on social media and web content, Hartman adds that she was copied on other emails, including whether to accept interview requests or not. Again, Bill Belichick has told the people at North Carolina, hey, when you send me an email, will you CC my 24-year-old girlfriend too, just so she's looped in? Belichick? Something is not right with Bill Belichick. And I couldn't give a rat's ass that Bill is 70-something years old and she's 24 years old. I don't care about that. Is it kind of weird? Yeah. But, I mean, again, that's his business. That's his private life. That I don't care about. But once you all of a sudden start including her on the email chain, now it becomes business. That's like the guy who takes his wife to work with him every day and she just sits in the corner. I don't like that. Something is fishy. And the other thing about this when it comes to Belichick is this is just so un-Belichick, is it not? For years, Bill Belichick was so buttoned up and was so on the cutting edge and was so Bill's way or the highway. And it didn't matter who his wife was. It didn't matter who his girlfriend was. It didn't matter. None of this mattered. And now all of a sudden, Bill Belichick over the last couple of years has just done things that are so off-brand and so befuddling, I can't get over it. The first was a couple of years ago when Josh McDaniels left and took the Raiders job to be the head coach, and he made Matt Patricia, a defensive coach, the offensive coordinator. And I thought, what the hell is Belichick doing? But at that point in time, Belichick still had a little magic where it was like, well, you know, hey, it's Bill. And don't you think if anybody knows how to do this, it would be Bill? But now, copy my girlfriend on all the emails? What? And Florio writes at Pro Football Talk, while no one in league circles is openly mocking Belichick yet, there are plenty of private utterances that go something like this. What the hell has happened to Bill? I'm just going to tell it like I see it. And I know Floyd and Bill were great friends. And, you know, again, I thought this whole thing of Bill going to college football was stupid to begin with. But when Bill took the North Carolina job, Floyd's son posted on Facebook, ACC championship, here they come. So my guess is, again, I don't want to speak for Floyd, but the Reeses believe that he's on his way. I think Bill's lost it. Like, I think Bill is senile. I think Bill has completely lost it. The ability to be Bill Belichick is gone. Like, I'm worried for him. I heard somebody say this week that people in the NFL, they look at this. If Bill ever wanted to get back into the NFL, people in the NFL are probably looking at this thinking, what happened to Belichick? What happened to nothing's more important than football? What happened to locking himself in the room? Who cares about all the distractions and what happened to Belichick? And now Belichick's parading around town with a 24-year-old girlfriend, and he's telling everybody at UNC, hey, talk to her. If you want to talk to me, talk to her. That's not Bill Belichick. Could you imagine what Bill Belichick would have done if Tom Brady was like, hey, Bill, if you want to talk to me about what kind of scheme we have to run, then you need to talk to Giselle about that first. Belichick would have cut him. Like, he would have cut Tom Brady over that. Well, you know, no one's better than the team. Instead, now it's like, hey, go ahead and email my girlfriend. This is major college football we're talking about here. Belichick's got 20 assistant coaches. He's probably got like 15 personal handlers. And we're seeing the girlfriend? And she's 24. Like, what are we doing here? I don't get it. I think something's wrong with Bill. I'm worried. I'm worried for Bill. Again, you want to go knock down a 29-year-old when you're in your 70s? Salute. Whatever, that's your business, not mine. But when you bring it to work, now all of a sudden it leads to people saying, what is the matter with Belichick? Like, at least when Bobby Petrino had his mistress on the motorcycle, at least we all understood that, right? Bobby P's getting his rocks off. That's why when it comes to Belichick, like, Bill can do that with the 24-year-old girlfriend. She doesn't need to be around the facility all day, right? So, again, somebody help me out here. I'm worried. I'm worried about the well-being of Bill Belichick because he doesn't sound anything like Bill Belichick anymore. He sounds like some guy who's, I don't know, like running a mafia family or something. Like, like we get the girlfriend, the sons are on the staff. This is not the Belichick that I know. So I wanted to get that off my chest. 615-737-1025. And I am disturbed, not about the situation, but just what happened to Bill? 615-737-1025. So there's, I think, an almost certain possibility that the Titans are taking Cam Ward at number 1. I think most people think that. I think most people should think that. I think they are taking Cam Ward at number 1. But there's one thing that a lot of people won't let go. There's one thing that they won't just completely dismiss, even though I have. And we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 105 the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, and we are live at Bridgestone Arena where the Predators take on the St. Louis Blues tonight right here, 7 o'clock on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. So if you're new to this program, you may be unfamiliar with one of the core values of it, which is the duck theory. You know, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, chances are it's probably a duck. And we believe when it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, that it is a duck until proven otherwise. The Tennessee Titans hold the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. The Tennessee Titans have already said Will Levis is not for sure going to be the starter. They've already said they're going to do all their due diligence on the quarterbacks. They've already passed on quarterbacks in free agency, signing a Scarbini backup, a career backup, Brandon Allen, to a 1-year contract. The Titans didn't have any interest reportedly in Sam Darnold, no interest in Aaron Rodgers, no interest in Russell Wilson, no interest in any of those guys. The names that came out, Mac Jones and Zach Wilson, and I can tell you, they didn't have any interest in Mac Jones. So if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, again, it's probably a duck. The Titans hold the number 1 pick. Cam Ward's the top prospect in the class. And it looks like they're going to take Cam Ward. And so when Paul Kaharski reported 2 weeks ago that the Titans were not in on Sam Darnold, I said, congratulations to Cam Ward. And slowly over the last 2 weeks, people have started to get the memo. It looks like they're taking Cam Ward. ESPN's Jordan Raynon says that the Giants' hopes of trading to number 1 are gone. And yet Paul Kaharski on the football show on 440 Sports yesterday, the same guy that told us that they were not interested in Sam Darnold, and he was right. Mr. BNN himself, the Brinker News Network. Here's what Paul Kaharski said about the Titans and Cam Ward.
So I don't think anything we've heard about Cam Ward has been in the least bit surprising, and none of it has been hurrah, or this guy really made a move or anything like that. I think they have, and quite intentionally, been completely level, pulseless on Cam Ward as to nobody knows what they're doing with Cam Ward. I don't know if they've decided yet what they're doing with Cam Ward, but if they have, my impression is they're going to keep a lid on it, and they may well keep a lid on it until draft night, larger in part to maintain some, better spot for tradability. Doesn't hurt them, certainly, but also because draft night is a huge television show for the NFL, and the NFL tells these teams, we don't want you to tell people what you're doing, even if you know it well in advance, because we'd like there to be suspense.
Okay. Number 1, was there suspense last year of whether or not the Bears were going to take Caleb Williams? You know the answer. Was there suspense whether or not Carolina was going to take Bryce Young? I mean, I remember the 2020 draft when the Bengals took Joe Burrow, and immediately after they took him, one of those insiders, I can't remember who, came on and said, yeah, the Bengals actually gave Joe Burrow the playbook in like mid-March, and Joe has already been learning the playbook. Like, this was not a surprise to Joe. This wasn't a surprise to anybody. The reason I say this is I wonder a couple things. Number 1, is the Brinker News Network, are they putting it out there that, hey, it's not a slam dunk in Cam Ward, because they want Titan fans to know that, as much as, again, all the stars seem to align that it is Cam Ward? Or is this as simple as PK, he's a reporter. He heard it from the Titans. Clearly, he went to the combine and heard at the combine that the Titans weren't interested in Sam Darnold. Because as soon as he got back from the combine, he was on Robbie and Rex Road, and he said they're not interested in Sam Darnold. So clearly, that's what he heard at the combine. Is this Paul just saying, well, I haven't heard, the Titans haven't told me that they're taking Cam Ward, so because they haven't told me that they're taking Cam Ward, I think there's a legitimate chance that they're not taking Cam Ward? Is that what this is? Because here's what I can't get over. If you don't draft Cam Ward with the number 1 pick, who's your quarterback going to be? Like, this isn't a video game where you can be a skilled enough player that you can go out there and take Will Levis and win with him. I mean, you have to be able to rely on your quarterback. The quarterback is the most important person because he's the one guy on the field who gets to make every decision. As much as he doesn't call the plays, when the quarterback's at the line, he's the final fail-safe at that line of scrimmage saying, whoa, 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 we're about to run the ball to the right side, and they've got 7 guys on the right side of the line. Change the play. There's nobody on defense who gets to decide what happens on every play. The quarterback is the one guy on the team that gets to decide what happens on every play. And so you can't just go out there with nobody at quarterback and win. And that's what they have right now. All of the guys, if you weren't going to take Cam Ward, all of the guys that you would have been interested in are now gone for the most part, right? Like if you would have been interested in Sam Darnold, he's gone. I didn't even know Geno Smith was available for a trade, but if you weren't going to take Cam Ward, and if you were for sure going to maximize the draft capital that you were going to get this year, but you also wanted to keep your job, you would have traded for Geno Smith. You might have called the Bengals and tried to acquire Jake Browning, the backup there to be the starting quarterback, who's worked with Brian Callahan before. The Jets, again, they know they're rebuilding, new coach, new general manager, but they paid $20 million for Justin Fields, and Justin Fields isn't even good. You didn't do any of that. Again, you signed a career backup who, in his lifetime in the NFL, has been the backup to Joe Burrow when Joe Burrow was a young quarterback, and has been the backup to Brock Purdy, with Brock Purdy being a young quarterback. That tells you they're interested in a young quarterback. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, why is Paul getting on his high horse saying they're not taking Cam Ward? Cam Ward is, by most estimations, the number 1 quarterback in this class. TD has said, as soon as he left the combine, if they use the number 1 pick, it will be on Cam Ward. If not, they'll trade out. Well, if they trade out, who's their quarterback going to be? Sam Darnold's not available anymore. They're not interested in Aaron Rodgers. They're not interested in Russell Wilson. They didn't trade for Geno Smith. Daniel Jones has already signed a deal. Justin Fields has signed a deal. Zach Wilson has signed a deal. Mac Jones has signed a deal. Who's going to be the quarterback? And it is not going to be. That's why, again, I understand Paul's like, well, they haven't said they're taking Cam Ward. Their actions have said they're taking Cam Ward. They're taking Cam Ward. It's the only thing that makes any sense. And everything else is a pie in the sky. What if, Jared? Like, if they weren't sure they were taking a quarterback, then they would have done a deal with a Daniel Jones, a bridge-ish quarterback that, hey, if we take the quarterback, then the quarterback can start. But if we don't take the quarterback, then Tyrod Taylor's going to be our quarterback. We can win some games with Tyrod. That's not what Brandon Allen is. You can't win any games with Will Levis. He's been a starter for 2 years. He's won 5 games. And one of those games, Miami, he barely even played. So I'm trying to read between the lines here about, and I just can't get over, who's your quarterback going to be? And that's why, for me, again, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, they're taking Cam Ward. I said this the day that the rumors came out that they weren't interested in Darnold. I said you have 3 options: Darnold, Ward, or suck. They were not interested in Darnold. They control their destiny on Ward. And I can promise you, with this owner, with a stadium being built, with PSLs that are incredibly expensive, she's not down for sucking. So the pick, it's got to be Cam Ward. 615-737-1025. Now, both Mel and Daniel Jeremiah mocked Cam Ward at number 1 to the Titans in their latest mock drafts that came out today. And Adam Schefter was asked about the latest as to what's going on with the number 1 pick. And while, again, all signs point to Cam Ward, there is one little question mark that we'll get to coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
What are you hearing about the Titans taking a quarterback at 1?
Laura, I think that they're being very diligent and thorough in their approach, and they want to do a lot of work before they make a decision. It certainly sounds like if they stay at 1, that Cam Ward would be the number 1 pick, and if the team traded up, Cam Ward would be the number one pick. So it's going to be up to Tennessee and the new general manager, Mike Borngazi, to decide here. Are they better off? Do they believe enough in Cam Ward to stay there at 1 and pick their quarterback of the future? Or are they better off dangling that pick, getting back a boatload of draft pick compensation in return, and basically punting on getting your quarterback of the future until another year?
That was Adam Schefter yesterday saying, hey, Tennessee, if they use the pick. So if the Titans decide to use the pick, it's going to most likely be on Cam Ward. And yet, he's not giving up the idea of a trade. And I heard Adam Schefter talk about, well, the idea would be that they're thinking about punting. They're thinking about punting on 2025. Again, my plan going into all of this was we're going to trade the pick, but we're also not going to punt on 25 because we're going to sign Sam Darnold. So we're going to sign Sam Darnold. We're going to trade the draft pick back. We're going to get multiple draft picks. I wanted to trade the pick twice. I wanted to trade it to the Giants at 3, and then I wanted to trade it again. If Shedeur Sanders is there and somebody else wants a quarterback, if somebody's just desperate to jump the Patriots for Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter or whatever, like trade it again, get to 7, and then take Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas. But that was my plan. I don't know what their plan, was. And Adam Schefter saying, the way Adam's saying it is kind of similar to the way Paul's saying it. In fact, David, can we run these two cuts kind of, we'll run the Paul one first, and then we'll run the Schefter one. And again, the recurring theme in this is that the Titans haven't made up their mind. Here's what Paul said.
So I don't think anything we've heard about Cam Ward has been in the least bit surprising. And none of it has been, hurrah, hurrah, or this guy really made a move or anything like that. I think they have, and quite intentionally, been completely level, pulseless on Cam Ward as to nobody knows what they're doing with Cam Ward. I don't know if they've decided yet what they're doing with Cam Ward, but if they have, my impression is they're going to keep a lid on it, and they may well keep a lid on it until draft night, larger in part to maintain some, better spot for tradability.
Okay.
Doesn't hurt them, certainly.
So that's the Paul cut, where again, he's like, my understanding is they haven't decided, but even if they have decided, they won't say anything because they want to keep open the option that they can trade this pick. And remember, Paul came back from the combine and said, if you want the number 1 pick, you've got to deal next year's first. And hey, Giants, you want Cam Ward? Drop your first next year. Well, it seems like that's changed to what we all think is, they're for sure going to draft Cam Ward, but that wouldn't make a lot of sense, right? Then the Schefter cut, again, the one that we just played. David, let's play that again and listen to how Adam Schefter says, it looks like a duck. It looks like they're going to take Cam Ward, but play the cut.
Think that they're being very diligent and thorough in their approach, and they want to do a lot of work before they make a decision. It certainly sounds like if they stay at 1, that Cam Ward would be the number 1 pick, and if a team traded up, Cam Ward would be the number 1 pick. So it's going to be up to Tennessee and the new general manager, Mike Borngazi, to decide here. Are they better off? Do they believe enough in Cam Ward to stay there at 1 and pick their quarterback of the future? Or are they better off dangling that pick, getting back a boatload of draft pick compensation in return, and basically punting on getting your quarterback of the future until another year?
Okay. So again, he's not saying they're thinking trade, but he's saying, hey, I'm not ruling out trade. Daniel Jeremiah wrote something similar in his mock draft today where he has Cam Ward at 1. Charles Robinson was on Robbie and Rex Road last week. He said Cam Ward's camp thinks it's going to be the Titans or the Giants with the first pick. They don't know who. It's looking Titans, but they don't know. So with Cam Ward, there is a whisper of a potential trade. And I'm trying to figure out the why. Why is there a whisper that the Titans might be interested in dealing this pick? Again, it's not very loud. When they got the pick, it felt like it was very loud. Hey, we want all these top 100 picks. Trade up. And just think about the other side of the quarterback market. There was no whisper of interest in Sam Darnold, no whisper and interest of Aaron Rodgers. They whispered those crap quarterbacks like Mac Jones and Zach Wilson to get everybody ready for the fact that the Titans weren't going to address quarterback in free agency. So I just wonder if the Titans really are actually planning to shock us by trading Cam Ward to the Giants, who are desperate, and they're going to wring every last ounce out of this idea that hey, we're going to take Cam Ward and you don't know what we're going to do, and we're going to wring every last ounce of drama out of it to get the best single offer we can get from the Giants. And then we're going to go into this year with Brandon Allen at quarterback, and everybody's going to get fired. And I don't even know if Brinker can survive that. Like, that's a freaking gutsy move. Or maybe the reason why one of these veteran quarterbacks, maybe they'll do what the Patriots did in 2020 when Brady went to Tampa Bay and they had Jarrett Stidham on their roster, and there was a thought, okay, they're going to take one of the quarterbacks. But they're not going to be able to take Burrow. They're not going to be able to take Tua. They're not going to be able to take Herbert. Probably not going to be able to take Jordan Love, but they'll take one of these quarterbacks. And then they didn't. They didn't take a single guy. Stidham was the only guy. And then right before training camp, they signed Cam Newton to like a league minimum deal. And the point of that was, well, we got to put somebody in there. And so it was Cam Newton. Maybe that's what they do. Between Jameis and Russell and Aaron, and they wait until the last second, and then they just sign. Again, I'm trying to figure out why there's still a whisper that they might trade this pick. And if you were contemplating trading the pick, why did you not go get a quarterback like Daniel Jones, who, if you ended up trading the pick, could start at quarterback for you this upcoming season? Think about this. Last year, Chicago did not acquire somebody who, if they had to play quarterback, could play quarterback, because they knew and everybody else knew they were taking Caleb Williams. Minnesota acquired J.J. McCarthy. They acquired Sam Darnold with the design, according to the reports at the time, but they really, really, really wanted to trade up for Drake May. And if they didn't get Drake May, they really, really, really wanted J.J. McCarthy. But they had Sam Darnold just in case. You don't have a just in case guy. You have Brandon Allen. The Scarbini backup, whose, again, career resume is caddied for Joe Burrow when Joe Burrow was young. But again, whether it's Paul, whether it's Charles Robinson, whether it's Daniel Jeremiah, whether it's Adam Schefter, there seems to just be a little hint, like a little whisper that they're still thinking trade. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll weigh in on all your quarterback thoughts on this. 615-737-1025. PK pushes back and says, no, this is not for sure Cam Ward. Schefter says maybe they're still thinking of. So we have to keep it all in mind. 615-737-1025. Here on the program, Stillman & Company, 1025 Game.
Dart apparently skyrocketing up draft boards?
I'm actually not surprised by it. I think he has a lot of traits that you would want in a quarterback that goes in the first round. I think there have been, if you were to just test physically, you say, okay, height, weight, strength, mobility, arm strength. If you were to do that in comparison to Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart probably wins every category. And so, I think you look at that, you look at the fact that he played a lot of football in college. That's something I've talked about a lot. For some perspective, like Cam Ward, if you include Incarnate Word and the other stops, he's going to, leave college with over 2,300 pass attempts. And Jackson Dart, in similar fashion, not nearly as much as Cam Ward, but he's played a lot of football. And so, kind of like Bo Nix, where, here's a guy who has first rounder traits, right? Size, strength, athleticism, the what you kind of expect out of a first round quarterback. I think Jackson Dart possesses a lot of those. And so it doesn't really surprise me.
Okay, that was Tim Hasselbeck today on the Midday Show talking about, hey, this Jackson Dart first round talk. This is not surprising me. Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft has Jackson Dart at 9 to the New Orleans Saints. And I will say this about Jackson Dart. Again, I think the world of what Tim says, because I think Tim is an intellectually stimulating guy when it comes to the quarterback position. And I had a college coach in the SEC reach out to me who told me Jackson Dart was his favorite quarterback in this draft. And so I do wonder, again, these teams, Tennessee at 1, it sounds like they're going to take Cam Ward. It looks like they're going to take Cam Ward. And yet there seems to just be a whisper of trade talk. It kind of reminds me of A.J. Brown when there was the whisper of trade talk surrounding AJ. It's like, no, they want to sign AJ, but there was a whisper of trade. And then boom, they traded. Then there's these other teams. Yeah, the Raiders traded for Geno Smith, but they didn't give Geno Smith a bunch of money. Could they not take Jackson Dart at 6? The Jets committed really for 1.5 years to Justin Fields. They could take Jackson Dart. I don't think this is crazy. And so if the whisper of the trade exists, what it tells me is the Titans love another quarterback. Because, again, they were not interested in taking a veteran quarterback who can start. Sam Darnold could start, and everybody knows it. Aaron Rodgers can still start. Daniel Jones, if he has to, can start. Justin Fields is going to start. There's a couple of guys out there. Jameis Winston could still start, but there's very few guys compared to last week that are out there that today could start. And some of them took straight backup jobs, like Mac Jones in San Francisco. You got Brandon Allen. He can't start. So the only way, and this is why I guaranteed Cam Ward's going to be the pick, but I think I said last week, 92%. There's 7% that says they love one of these other guys, Sanders or Dart. And I think the guy they might like more is Dart. We had Sam Brookhouse on our show at the Super Bowl. He does the analytics for Sumer Sports. He's their lead draft analyst. He said they're analytic models. And again, take this with a grain of salt. Who knows how true all of this is? You guys know how this works. Ha, 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 ha. Analytics. But he said that their analytic models say no on Cam Ward, no on Shedeur Sanders, yes on Jackson Dart. And when I heard that, I said he's going in the first round because somebody is going to take a quarterback who the analytic models say is a very good quarterback. Then he threw well at the combine. He's 6'2". He's played a bunch of football in the SEC against the best defenses in the country. And when it comes to Cam Ward, I hear a lot of talk about, well, Jared, the draft gurus overlooked Patrick Mahomes. Maybe they're overlooking Cam Ward. But I don't see that same parallel with Ward. The guy I see the parallel with, and I am not, just want this to be abundantly clear, I am not comparing him to Mahomes. But the draft situation that is similar is not Ward. Everybody in the country knows about Cam Ward. It's Dart. Like, it's Dart. The reason why Patrick Mahomes fell in the 2017 draft to number 10 was because everyone in that air raid offense at Texas Tech, whether it's Graham Harrell or Cliff Kingsbury, or it does not matter who, every single person in that Mike Leach air raid offense threw for about a gazillion yards and 1,000 bazillion touchdowns. But Patrick Mahomes led college football with 5,000 yards, 41 touchdowns, and threw for 420 yards a game. But again, it was like, oh, that's that gimmicky air raid Texas Tech Big 12 offense. They score 76 points a game. You know, there's nothing there. Guess what Jackson Dart did this past year? Jackson Dart led all of college football with 4,200 yards. Led college football in yards per attempt, yards per game, and had the highest quarterback rating in the country. And he did it at Ole Miss in the mighty SEC. He beat Georgia, whose entire defense is one day going to be on the Philadelphia Eagles. And yet, I think similar to Mahomes, where people looked at that, oh, it's that air raid funky offense. They look at Dart and say, oh, it's that funky Lane Kiffin offense, and Lane Kiffin doesn't put guys into the pros. So the only real scenario, because there are people in the text line that are saying, what if they run it back with Levis, Jared? What if they trade the draft pick for a hole and they run it back with Will? They're not going to do that because they're not going to get any benefit of the doubt if Will Levis is the quarterback. If Will Levis is the quarterback next year and he blows as much as he sucked last year, then Chad Brinker is probably going to get fired because the fans are going to be upset about it, and Amy reacts when the fans get upset. So they're not going to do that. So really the only way, I'll leave 1% open for Levis being the quarterback. The only way that it's not Ward, and again, I think it's going to be Ward, but the only way it's not Ward is if they really love one of these other guys, they want to trade to 3 with the Giants. They want the Giants to think they love Ward, not know the guy they love, and then they take him. And Dart has more talent than Sanders. You just heard Tim Hasselbeck say that. 615-737-1025, and our phone lines are driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. One texter says, I believe that they will take a quarterback, but I can see them trading back for picks and Levis starting next year. Again, this is the weird thing about this time of the year. What's odd about the spring is that it's the time of the year when you can do something about your terrible situation. You can do something about a terrible. Last year, you didn't have a right tackle. And I kept saying, you got to get a right tackle. You got to get a right tackle. You got to get a right tackle. And they didn't. And Titan fans were like, I trust Bill Callahan more than I trust you. And I asked Brian Callahan after the draft. I said, so what are you going to do at right tackle? Well, we think these guys have traits. And if it doesn't work out, then we'll go claim somebody off somebody else's roster. And so we'll be able to figure out right tackle that way. Then they get in the middle of the season. Rand Carthon does one interview with the paper, and he says, well, there's no right tackles out there for us to go get. Right, because when there was a time to do something about it, it was the spring. But instead of doing something about it, everyone just had their hands up their tush, and they just said, oh, no, Bill Callahan will get it figured out. And it's like, that's how this works. So right now, this time of the year, you people can convince yourselves that Will Levis could still play quarterback, and I am telling you, that may be something you can talk yourself into right now. Well, you know, it really wasn't Levis that was that bad. It was really the line, and now we fixed the line a little bit, so let's put Levis back out there. Hey, that sounds like a great solution, except for the fact that on October 13th, if you do that, you are screwed, and there's no way out of it. Especially with Brandon Allen as the backup quarterback. I mean, unless you go get Tannehill to come back, there's no way out of this. So I'm telling you, they're not running it back with Levis. They'll be awful if they run it back with Levis, Levis has blown his chance. His confidence is shot. They're not running it back with Levis. If they were going to run it back with Levis, they would have announced it on the first day. They would have never benched him in favor of Mason Rudolph at the end of the year, and they would have gotten up at the podium at the end of the year, and they would have said, Will Levis is our quarterback. That's how you deliver bad news. You don't lead your fans along an entire offseason that they're going to take a quarterback with the number 1 pick and then trade the pick and then run the guy who was god-awful back out there. You never do that. Will on Music Row says, Jared, I don't love Cam Ward, but it is what it is. It would be more exciting to bamboozle everyone, trade back, and take Sanders. Why do I say that? Doesn't matter who the Titans take with the current roster. If they don't address the other positions, what are they going to do with all the other holes, like wide receiver 2, pass rusher, corner, tight end, linebacker, etc.? So, again, I am worried about the defense, and I'm worried about tight end. But I think if you get the quarterback, there's enough talent for you to win a significant more amount of games. More of your phones, 615-737-1025 here on the program. That's 615-737-1025. Plus, I have to get something off my chest. I have to get it off my chest. And we will do that at some point today as well. Stillman & Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
I think transparency is always best. I was very, very open with Will that we're all in this position because none of us were good enough, myself included. He was a part of that, but it wasn't just his fault either. And that's what I mean, that nobody was good enough. When you win 3 games, it's hard to pin it all on one person.
Yeah.
You know, we have to do a lot of things better. But I did tell him that at minimum, there's going to be competition.
Yeah.
And I can't answer what that looks like at this moment.
Don't know. Just be prepared.
And I told him, and my job is to continue to coach.
Yeah.
And I'm coaching Will as hard as I can coach him. He's going to do things to get himself better. And ultimately, like any competitor, just control what you can control, come back ready to go and be ready to compete. And you never know in this league when you get another opportunity. So let's say we end up taking a quarterback. There's no guarantee that he's going to play 17 games. And so God forbid you enter a game and not be prepared to perform again. So that's what you hope for. That's what players have to do. You got to be ready to go play. And Will just needs to worry about what he needs to worry about, and don't focus on anything other than you getting better. And I think that usually is a pretty good process.
Good luck to you. That's what Brian Callahan's saying. Hey, you just worry about whenever that next opportunity comes. But it ain't coming next year here with the Titans. And I am just shocked how many people have texted about what about Levis, Jared? What if they trade the pick and they end up putting Levis at quarterback and they get no, that ship has sailed. And the coach just told you that. When again, he's like, hey, we all weren't good enough, including me. Will's a part of that. But, you never know when you get your next opportunity in this league. Dude, they're not interested. Like, I'm just saying, they're not coming back with Will Levis. And it's almost like some of you are like, it's like a buddy I have. I don't know if I'd say went through a breakup, going through a break. I don't know the right way to say this. But a buddy of mine, we've all had this buddy, is like, I know she says she doesn't want to be with me, but I'm telling you she wants to be with me. And it's like, no. It's like, no, dude. For you people out there that are like, well, maybe they'll give Levis another chance. And maybe Levis, no. Brandon Allen is going to be caddying for some rookie, and it's 99.9% going to be Cam Ward. Caleb in Gallatin says, if the Titans are secretly in love with Jackson Dart, how far do you think the Titans would be comfortable trading down to get extra picks while still having Dart be available? I'm sure if they trade down and picked him at 3 with the Giants, everyone would say that he's picked way too high. Well, it doesn't matter what people say when someone is picked. That's one thing you cannot give a rat's ass about, is what everybody else thinks. Again, Mahomes was considered high at number 10. But apparently, as far as the league was concerned, New Orleans was picking at 11. They were going to take Mahomes. When Mahomes went off the board, Houston, who liked Mahomes and Watson, then had to jump up with New Orleans to get Watson because they didn't have a quarterback. They were in the same spot you were without the number 1 pick. They didn't have a quarterback. They had to deal a future first rounder to go up and get Deshaun Watson. And then Minnesota, I believe, New Orleans moved back, took Marshawn Lattimore, but New Orleans, Sean Payton, they were going to take Mahomes. So it doesn't matter what the other people, it doesn't matter what Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah and their big boards, and it doesn't matter. If you love Jackson Dart and you think, okay, the Giants love Cam Ward, so they're going to move up to number 1, they take Cam Ward. Who knows what Cleveland's going to do? Cleveland might. Then you have to ask yourself, how much do you love Jackson Dart? See, here's the other thing that could be happening. It could be as simple as the Titans have Cam Ward ranked at and I don't know the exact scale they're doing, but I think it's out of 8. They could have Cam Ward as a 6'5", and they could have Dart as a 6'4", and they could be okay with either. They could have Sanders as a 6'3", and they could say, hey, we can trade back to 3. We're fine with whoever we take. But again, don't worry about who says it's too high or not too high. Bo Nix last year, everybody, including me, was stunned when Bo Nix went off the board with the 12th pick. Nobody today is sitting there saying, well, wait a minute. What were the Broncos thinking? Whereas 2 years ago, nobody was surprised based upon what the draft gurus were saying about taking the guard with the 11th overall pick. And now we think it's probably one of the stupidest things Titans have ever done. One texter says, lying season is in bloom, and I could totally see the Titans trading back to 3 and drafting Jackson Dart. Dart's the guy I've heard a little, I had a college coach tell me, he's like, this is the guy I like. Tim Hasselbeck said, more physically talented than Shedeur Sanders earlier today on the program. One text says, is Levis QB2 or is Levis QB3? Levis is going to be on another team. That's why. One texter says, are you kidding? The Titans have said 10,000 times. You have said 10,000 times the Titans picked a guard at 11. You're a joke. I don't get it. Yeah, it was a disaster. And people said at the time, oh, it's so, Jared, he's plug and play. They say he's the most sure thing in the draft. I'm like, he's a freaking guard. And there's no guarantee of that. So even if he is great, it doesn't mean you're going to win games because nobody wins because of their guard. Don't even get me worked up. Terrell says, so what if the Titans get a trade offer from the Giants? Then what's the pick at 3? What do you think has to be offered from the Giants to take the offer? So I don't know how much they like Cam Ward. You're asking me to try to put myself in their shoes because Paul said 2 weeks ago that if you wanted to take the number 1 pick, you had to drop your first rounder next year, which made it sound like if the Giants offered 3 and their first next year, Cam Ward would have been theirs. But when they didn't take Sam Darnold and they didn't sign even a Daniel Jones, I started to think, well, it must be because they love Cam Ward. If you love a quarterback, you're not trading 3 number 1 picks for him. In the 2020 draft, Miami, who had tanked for Tua that year, Miami had the 5th pick, and it was reported that Miami loved Joe Burrow. Well, no duh. They loved Joe Burrow. Everybody loved Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was awesome his last year at LSU. And the report was Miami was going to call Cincinnati, and they would do what it takes to get to number 1. Cincinnati hung up the phone and said, nah, we're good. So if you love Ward, then there's nothing the Giants can trade you to get there. My guess, again, if you're trying to squeeze every last drop of juice out of the Giants, it's 334 and they're 1 next year. And again, you're probably more likely to get one of those 2 and not the other. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Who knows what the Titans think of Cam Ward? It seems like they love him and they're going to take him number 1, but who knows? Well, I know what Titan fans think of Cam Ward, and it's starting to get a little dangerous. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Bridgestone Arena tonight, Preds and Blues, 7 o'clock. Barry Trotz on this program, 5 o'clock. Trevor in 30 minutes. So there is one thing I'm starting to see that I think is pretty dangerous, that I'm a little worried about with Titans fans. And look, I understand wanting to be excited. And I understand the fact that the NFL draft is a complete and total crapshoot. Now, look, some people are better at it than other people. I think one thing that we don't discuss enough is how you set your players up for success once you draft them. But the draft is kind of a crapshoot. Again, every year we're told, oh my God, Solomon Thomas is so good. And then we never hear from Solomon Thomas again. Even in free agency, there are some guys that have signed these kind of small contracts that I'm like, man, remember when Jeff Okudah was a can't-miss prospect and went number 3 in a draft that Justin Herbert went number 6? A.J. Brown was the 51st pick of the draft. And I remember when the Titans took him thinking, who's going to play right guard? So I understand the crapshoot nature of the draft. But expectations in life, I think, are everything. I think that's why sometimes making the NCAA tournament for Vanderbilt is absolutely a watershed moment, whereas it's really not that big of a deal. And it will be a very upsetting season if Duke loses in the NCAA tournament in the round of 32. I say this because I'm a little worried about what Titan fans are doing with Cam Ward. By all accounts, Cam Ward is a first-round prospect, right? Blake Bedingfield said, hey, I've got a first-round grade on Cam Ward. Now, it's not a high first-round grade. It's not a number 1 pick grade, but it's definitely a first-round grade. Even people inside the league are saying, yeah, Michael Penix was behind Cam Ward. But Titan fans, they can't stop there. They can't stop there with, okay, well, we're going to take a quarterback, and he doesn't profile as well as these other guys, but we'll see what ends up happening. No. It's got to get taken to another level. I didn't watch the video, but Justin Graver at Titans Film Room on Twitter, he made a YouTube video, and all I saw was kind of the preview of the video. And the YouTube video says, the perfect QB prospect. And it has a picture that is a split right down the middle. On the left side of the picture is the left side of Patrick Mahomes' face. On the right side of the picture, again, split right down the middle, is a picture of Cam Ward. Here we go. So this went from all off season or all off draft season, so all regular season, saying, yeah, this isn't a very good quarterback class. Cam Ward's climbing a little bit. Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, who knows? Dylan Gabriel, no. Will Howard, no. The Kyle McCord kid, he's starting to do a little bit here. It's just not a great draft class. It's just not a great quarterback class. It's just got to. The perfect prospect is our guy. And I thought, oh no. It's like, again, you people. And every time I say this, that I'm like, guys, Cam Ward, as of right now, in what is considered to be a bad draft, Cam Ward is, as far as the consensus board is concerned, not Johnny's board, not Jimmy's board, not Mel Kiper's board, not Daniel Jeremiah's board, but the consensus of all of the draft gurus. Cam Ward is the 13th ranked player in this draft. And now we're comparing him to Mahomes. Are we comparing him to Mahomes because he's actually like Mahomes? Or are we comparing him to Mahomes because, well, it makes us feel better to think, yes, this guy's our guy. We're on our way. And every time I bring up the fact that it's probably more likely that Cam Ward is going to be the Kyler Murray type quarterback, the more finger wagging I get with, put on the tape, Jared. Well, guess what? I've watched Cam Ward's tape, and I can tell you, he's not Patrick Mahomes. Secondly, maybe, this is just some advice, like not just for your football fandom, but maybe advice for life. Maybe be cautious about raising your expectations simply because you want to feel better about the situation. I have a son. He's 3 months old. So he's not at school age yet. Obviously, he's not getting grades. He's not any of these things. But if my son's a C student and we want him to be a B student or an A student, do you think we're just going to sit there and say, son, we want you to be an A student, and that's that? Because that's what, again, I feel like a lot of you do in your lives, is you just want to believe it. So you say, you know what? He's Mahomes. Let's go. And I can't do that. Rick Spielman is now a senior advisor for the Jets, but during the year, he worked for CBS Sports, and he had a podcast with the first pick. And I really like when it comes to Spielman, I like his evaluation. I like his track record when he was general manager in Minnesota. I mean, I like Rick Spielman. Now, again, everybody misses. It happens. He missed sometimes too, but he also hit. He said that Cam Ward reminded him of a little bit better version of Tyrod Taylor. But nope. Mahomes. That's what we're doing now. Mahomes. And do you know what this really reminds me of? What I find to be eerily similar to this, Cam Ward has gone from, well, maybe he's the best prospect. Maybe he's the best prospect in a bad quarterback draft and a bad draft in general, to he might be the next Mahomes, Jared. It reminds me of what happened last year with Will Levis. I liked what Will Levis did as a rookie. I really did. Felt like he had no offensive line. His receivers were garbage. I saw mistakes that he made, and I thought to myself, okay, either the game will slow down for him as he enters year 2, and those little mistakes he made, he'll now have the time to be able to breathe, and he'll be able to really collect himself, and the game will slow down, and his mental processing will speed up, and he'll put it together, or he'll never be able to do it. And I did not know how. Like, I did not know, okay, which one this is going to be. By the end of the first game, I did. After they lost to Chicago. I see the game's not speeding up for him. He just doesn't process well. It is what it is. But what happened last year was, instead of the, oh man, this could go either way with Levis, it turned into, we've got our franchise quarterback, Jared. And I remember talking to somebody who used to be a general manager. And I said, what do you make of the fact that this entire city thinks like Levis is on his way to being Marino? And the general manager told me, I think the people in your city seem to think more of him than everybody else across the country. And yet, internally, this fan base was being fed red meat by their bullcrapping general manager and their overly optimistic head coach, with every podcast interview they were doing about how, oh man, he's everything you want. We don't need to go evaluate the other quarterbacks because we have Will Levis. And Will Levis is ready for the moment. And Will Levis this and Will Levis that. And I took the job because of Will Levis. And Amy Adams Strunk, when she fired Vrabel, sat down and told Mike Keith, we got an exciting young quarterback. Whoa, 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 whoa. But there was no stopping this fan base when it came to Levis. It was like, he's our guy. He's going to be a star. He's going to be like Drew Brees. Fell to the second round, onto the Hall of Fame. It's like, whoa now. And now we're starting to do this with Cam Ward. Again, the perfect quarterback prospect. On one side, Mahomes. On the other side, Cam Ward. What I say yesterday, I'm going to keep using this analogy. The NFL world is telling us that Patrick Mahomes, a consensus, is the 13th best player in this draft, in a bad draft, Titan fans think they're hiring Brad Pitt to star in their movie. The NFL world is telling us Brad Garrett. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And Tim Hasselbeck, I thought, had one of the most intellectually stimulating comments today on the midday show. When it came to all this stuff, I want to play that next, and we'll get to your phones. Again, stop doing the Mahomes thing. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game.
It just always kind of bothers me when we do these draft, comparisons. Everybody is, every left tackle, like the comparison is Jonathan Ogden. It's like, no. Like, who's the Mike Roos, right? Like, because like, it's going to be that guy too. Like, and that's okay. That's a first rounder. That's a decade-long starter. Like, I just think sometimes our comparisons are wrong. And I also think the expectations are wrong. So if you knew that you were drafting Andy Dalton, and that's why I'm saying it, for a lot of people initially, it'll sound like an insult. But if you knew you were drafting Andy Dalton, you got the pick right.
There you go. When you talk to Tim Hasselbeck, he says, stop comparing every player to a great player. Like, stop doing that. Again, you want to sit there and say, we want Ray Lewis at middle linebacker. Everybody wants Ray Lewis at middle linebacker. Wouldn't you be happy, though, if you drafted a guy in the first round and he ended up being C.J. Mosley? Like, wouldn't that be good enough? That's what Tim's saying. And that's why I keep going back when it comes to Cam Ward and the Titans. I keep going back to Kyler Murray. Now, somebody texted in and said, why is your comp for Ward Murray? It's not my comp. Again, Murray doesn't have Ward's size, but Kyler Murray has far better athleticism and, probably a stronger arm than Ward. But I think Ward's size allows him to make maybe a couple more plays with his arm than Murray can. They're very different players. But I'm talking about that kind of quarterback. Kyler Murray is one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. But he's never going to be one of the 10 best. Just never going to be. He's not. He doesn't have the talent. He doesn't have the ability. He doesn't have and he went number 1 overall. And the Arizona Cardinals are never going to be able to be in a position where they can get better than Kyler. But they're never going to win anything with Kyler as their quarterback. And that's what worries me. And yet, I don't ever hear anybody talking about the fact that that's exactly what Ward could be. I hear people say things to me like, if they take Cam Ward, he will be a bust and everybody will be fired. That is one outcome. But the other outcome is, which is maybe a little bit less likely, but again, still the other end of the spectrum, is he becomes a superstar and now it's C.J. Stroud and Jaden Daniels and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Cam Ward and Joe Burrow and whatever. But what we forget about is we forget about Kyler. We forget about Andy Dalton. We forget about Daniel Jones. We forget about Baker Mayfield. We forget about these guys kind of in the middle. You don't want that. You had that. Tannehill. We all hated it when we realized that you couldn't get past Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow in the playoffs with Tannehill. So Tim says the first thing about stop trying to look for Jonathan Ogden, go look for Michael Roos. And then he was asked, okay, well, if Cam Ward's a first-round quarterback, then what about Cam Ward at number 1? Here's what Tim Hasselbeck said.
So, but there's extra pressure on the first pick, don't you think, from the fans?
Yeah, there is. And so here's what I would say about Cam Ward. Cam Ward, he has like elite traits. Like his ability to throw the football is different than Shedur's, different than Andy Dalton's when he came out. And I think when you look at the pass, okay, and I've referenced this before, and so it's like the evidence of proof of like what can the guy do. You're not evaluating 393 attempts. You literally have the ability to evaluate 2,400 attempts on Cam Ward. So, like, there should be way less mystery on Cam Ward than there is when you're drafting Mark Sanchez with 17 starts in college, or, Anthony Richardson's few starts, or Trey Lance's situation. Look, and I think that's one of the reasons why, people miss when they looked at. Or I'll give you another example of a guy who played a lot of football. Go look at Bo Nix. So like there's so much to evaluate and say, wait a second, and he has these physical traits, and he has that time on task. Yeah, this is worth it. So, yeah, I do think Cam Ward has the traits to make it worth it.
Okay, so when he says Cam Ward, he's got some traits there. It's kind of like Bo Nix. One texter says, Now, I have to say, you always say if you're drafted number 1, you better be a Hall of Famer for sure. Discuss Cam at number 1 and how he'll be a Hall of Famer. I don't see it. I don't see it, but maybe he could be. But I'm certainly not looking at Cam Ward the same way I looked at Andrew Luck, the same way everybody supposedly looked at John Elway. They're not the same kind of prospects. And that's why I have a hard time saying, hey, you take a guy number 1, everyone's going to say, well, he was taken number 1. And they're not going to care about the fact that it was because all the quarterbacks were bad and he's actually a worse prospect than Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy. They're not going to care about that. They're going to want you to go to the Hall of Fame. Again, we got the comparison to Patrick Mahomes. Easy. One texter says, I believe that you're the only one hearing the Patrick Mahomes comparison, but I've heard the Steve McNair comparisons all day long. When it comes to comparing quarterbacks to Steve McNair, I'm very careful when I do that because Steve McNair was a very good quarterback. But the reason I kind of have a hard time with Cam Ward is because Cam's athletic, but Cam wasn't the kind of athlete Steve was. Now, Steve wasn't Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick or any of those guys, but Steve was like 245 pounds. Cam Ward's not that guy. Steve would lean over and knock somebody out. And I remember when the Titans took Malik Willis and Daniel Jeremiah said his comp for Malik Willis was Steve McNair. Then I saw Malik Willis on the practice field. This guy's as tall as me. That's not Steve McNair. So when I hear the Steve McNair comps and I've seen Cam Ward play, Steve McNair was never a throw off platform kind of guy. Like Cam Ward, and I do wonder if Cam Ward ever played baseball, and I'm serious about this. I don't know whether or not he played baseball or whether or not I do wonder if he ever played baseball because there is a little bit of that kind of shortstop, third base, second base kind of drop it down from the side, on the run, get it to first base kind of thing. Whereas most guys are kind of more outfield throwers or pitchers where you line your shoulders up and you bring your arm all the way around and you kind of throw down on the ball. Whereas again, shortstop ball hit to short. This is why they all have to be right-handed to play shortstop. Ball gets hit to short, guy takes it, boom, side right over into second, turn the double play. Guy at second base catches it. Maybe a guy's bearing down on him. He's got to drop it low, and he's got to put it into first base. Third base, there's a ball on the ground, a bunt. Guy comes in charging, off balance, boom, puts the ball right on the first baseman. Those are some of the things that Ward does. McNair never did that. And to me, that's kind of the thing that Ward does well, that I feel like a lot of people, get really excited about, which is a very special trait. My question is, if you can't read the blitz, which in college he either didn't want to do, didn't feel like he needed to do it because maybe he thought in the ACC and in the Pac-12 he was a gifted enough athlete just to kind of wiggle away from people. You can't do that in the NFL. When that's Nick Bosa or when that is Myles Garrett, you can't just wiggle away. So if he's got to be able to recognize the blitz at the line of scrimmage. If he can recognize the blitz at the line of scrimmage and check out of a play, and then he can kind of work his little magic, then I think there's something there. If he can't check out of the blitz, and so there's 7 guys coming, and he's facing a blitz, and he just, snaps the ball, and he's got 5 guys in protection and 5 guys in the pattern, so 2 guys come free, and Cam Ward gets walloped, then it doesn't matter what he can do on the run and what kind of plays he can make off script and what kind of, things he can do with the ball. So I have a hard time with the McNair comp. One day says, McNair was a good but not great quarterback, took a miracle fluke play to get us to a Super Bowl, couldn't even win an MVP without being a co-MVP. This city overvalues him. Yeah, I'd take Steve McNair on this team. I'm telling you right now, I'd take McNair. Again, what did Tim Hasselbeck say? Stop trying to compare everybody to the best. Stop trying to draft a receiver in the first round hoping that you drafted Jerry Rice. Like, it's not the end of the world if you have J.J. Stokes, but everybody wants Jerry Rice. One Dave says, what happened to trading down and getting Carter or Hunter? Isn't there a decent option at quarterback for a year or so? Nope. Those guys are all signed and they're all somewhere else. And then there's Rodgers, who, again, he's not coming here. 615-737-1025. Trevor Mattox joins us next. His thoughts on everybody kind of all in on Cam Ward. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Need a bracket to fill out for the NCAA men's basketball tournament? Head to the game Nashville.com and download or print off your bracket today. Presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at Toyota.com. Toyota Let's Go Places. Also brought to you by the NewCumberland.com, Twin Peaks, and Bet365. 2 mock drafts came out today. One from the lead draft analyst at ESPN, Mel Kiper Jr., who has the Titans taking, surprise, surprise, Cam Ward with the first overall pick. Daniel Jeremiah, the lead draft analyst at the NFL Network, has the surprise, surprise, Cam Ward as the number 1 overall pick. Trevor Mattox joins us now on the program from ESPN, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. So, Trevor, let's start on Cam Ward. And I know we've talked a lot about Cam Ward, but here's the question I'm going to ask, which is if we were sitting there right now talking about our football team, we are the Titans. I'm the general manager. You're the director of college scouting, assistant general manager, whatever. And we're talking big picture here. What kind of quarterback do you think we are most likely to get when it comes to Cam Ward? Do you think we're likely to get a game-changing franchise quarterback? Do you think we're likely to get a bust quarterback? Or do you think we're most likely to get a Kyler Murray quarterback who's good, but is probably never going to be great and take us to the top of the league?
I don't think the middle one is where we would be, Jared. I don't think that Cam Ward will be a pretty good quarterback. I think he'll either be great or I think he will bust. And the bust potential is because of how much he plays off schedule. You know, he'll drop back in the pocket and then drift around and try to do things that he gets away with in college, but that he wouldn't get away with in the NFL. For example, a lot of times when he has pass rushers come towards him, he'll back up instead of climbing or getting out to the side. And there are all kinds of things that he does where he throws the ball in the grasp of a pass rusher, for example, where he made big plays in college that in the NFL is just going to be a sack or just going to be a big hit. He's not even going to have a chance to show that amazing sidearm shortstop style passing. And so, you know, when you look at the more sophisticated coverages that he faced, for example, Georgia Tech, he really struggled against Georgia Tech. And when you put on that tape, you see Georgia Tech disguising coverages pre-snap and then going into something else after the snap, and that really threw him off, and he didn't perform well against Georgia Tech. Now, that happens to quarterbacks all the time. It's not that he's the only one that has that happen to him. But when you look at, for example, this sidearm throw that we talk a lot about, where he can change his arm angle to get the ball out around and by pass rushers that are approaching, that's fantastic. But he does that a lot even when he doesn't need to. And that does affect the accuracy of his placement downfield. And just putting the ball in a place where a receiver can catch it, in college, that's plenty enough. You'll win a lot of games and get a lot of yards doing it. But in the NFL, within the window, you've got to place the ball in a specific spot because the windows are smaller and the defenders covering those windows are much more quick at getting to where that ball is within the window. That's a problem with Kyle McCord of Syracuse. Kyle McCord throws the ball and gets it to the receivers all the time. The problem is that the receivers had to reach and stop and speed up and slow down and do all kinds of things in order to catch those balls, which they can do in college, but in the NFL, it's just not going to work. So those are some of the negatives, that and playing hero ball all the time and not just taking a profit and throwing the check down so that it's 2nd and 5, which is good in the NFL, but it's bad in the eyes of a guy who thinks he's a superhero quarterback. That guy wants to make a big play every time. But see, the positive side to him is that he does have the ability to throw the ball off schedule. He does have the ability to have things breaking down around him and still look downfield and put the ball where it needs to be. And so if they can coach him to be more precise, meaning the Titans, if they can coach him to be more precise with his drops, more precise with his decisions, more clean with how he throws the ball and marrying his feet with his eyes. A lot of times he'll drop back in the pocket in Miami and he'll look off to the left and then he'll look middle and then he'll look right and his feet don't follow his eyes. And if you've got time in the pocket, you've got to have your feet follow your eyes or else you're just not going to have the consistency of accuracy. So if he's able to take those natural traits that he's got and marry them with NFL precision, then he has an incredibly high upside. If he just wants to go around and play hero ball like he did all of his career, and because that's him and that got him to where he is, and he became the first pick in the draft, and he was a Heisman finalist, and he's not going to let some coach tell him to do something that he knows he can do, that he's done in the past, well, then the floor is pretty low because he'll be a turnover machine. So really it comes down to Cam Ward. Cam Ward is like he's a pile of clay, a pile of putty, and it's really pretty putty, and it'll hold whatever shape you put it in. And whoever shapes that putty, whether it's the coach or whether it's Cam's ego, will determine whether he's a high ceiling guy or a low floor guy.
So I guess then with that, I would ask you this question, which is, in my lifetime of watching football, which is significantly less than your lifetime, there have been two quarterbacks that went to, I think, really bad organizations and really, turned them around. And that's Peyton Manning and Joe Burrow, that have gone to organizations that, not great ownership. And the second they leave, they go back to what they were before. Other than that, everybody's had to have a little nurturing. You talk about how important the coaching is going to be for Cam Ward. Based off what you saw last year with Brian Callahan and the fact that the Titans have all but said he's on the hot seat this year, doesn't it make it sound like a mistake to have Cam Ward enter the NFL with an unproven head coach who's on the hot seat, and if they don't win games with Cam Ward in year one, probably gets fired, and now Cam Ward has to learn a totally different system? Doesn't that seem like a bad idea, Trevor?
No, I don't, because I think this coaching staff is plenty good enough to be able to coach Cam Ward as long as Cam Ward submits to the coaching. I think part of the problem with Will Levis is that, the offensive line and the receivers, the offensive line has been abysmal. The receivers have been questionable. And bless his heart, Will Levis has tried mightily to accept coaching. But what we saw with Levis is that he is not very instinctual. At least not yet. He does things in a way that's very robotic. So it looks good. He'll climb the pocket like he's supposed to if he feels like he needs to. But then he'll climb the pocket and then stay up there too long before either throwing the ball or running. And the problem is if you climb the pocket, you change the angle that the pass rusher takes to get to you. And when a guard and center is in front of a guy, assuming that you're in the pocket of 5 steps where you're supposed to be, if you climb the pocket, all of a sudden the pass protector is not at the same angle to be able to stop him. And so you've got to get the ball out or you've got to run. Just climb the pocket and stay there. And we saw Will Levis climb the pocket and stay there a lot last year. And so that's a robotic thing that he learned to do, but it's not very instinctual. And so, this coaching staff, you could see the coaching getting onto the field with Levis, but you didn't see it married with that kind of instinct to be able to athletically then turn that into making plays from the quarterback position.
Trev, what is your comp for Cam Ward when it comes to a quarterback? We're starting to hear some comps to Steve McNair, and I almost feel that might be just convenient because they both played for the Titans. I mean, Steve certainly was not able to throw off platform and off script the way that Ward is. So when you watch Cam Ward, who in the NFL, if anybody, does he remind you of?
In some ways, he reminds me a little bit of Baker Mayfield in that, Baker is not particularly, he's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback. He's not particularly scary as an athlete, but he's good enough to move around. He is a guy that is very focused, and he's focused on the right things. And he's got the ability to move his arm around. He's got the ability to throw on the move, get the ball to the right spot. Baker, I think, and Cam have a lot in common. Now, I think Cam probably has a higher potential ceiling than Baker, just because I think Cam has better arm talent than Baker. But arm talent is just one of the factors that go into the art of quarterbacking. But if you made me pick one right now, I'd say there's a real good comparison to Baker.
Trevor Mattox is with us on the program. His colleague Mel Kiper Jr. has a new mock draft out. We know Cam Ward is off the board at number 1. There are some names that would still be available in round 2 when the Titans pick around 35, which we'll get to with Trevor, plus one surprise in the top 10. We'll do that with Trevor next. Stillman and Company. We are live at Bridgestone Arena here on our program. And Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 to the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Trevor Mattox is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, your colleague Mel Kiper Jr. put out his latest mock draft, and a surprise in the top 10 at number 9, Jackson Dart from Ole Miss goes off the board. Dart was very impressive at both the Senior Bowl and the Combine. And Trevor, I've been thinking about what you've said about Lane Kiffin maybe being the reason that Dart's being held back, that people would use that against him. Jackson Dart led college football in passing yards, quarterback rating, yards per attempt, and I believe there's one other major statistical category off the top of my head I can't remember. Jackson Dart at 9 to the Saints. Too rich, or do you think that, no, Jackson Dart might be that kind of player?
Big risk. He might be that kind of player, but there are things beyond just the offense that he ran in college that are concerning. I mean, part of the reason that quarterbacks have come out of Lane Kiffin's style of offense and have struggled early in their NFL career is because they aren't asked to do a whole lot of reading and progression. They're often throwing to receivers that are wide open because guys like Lane Kiffin are good at scheming receivers open. And they just tell the quarterback, yeah, throw it over to number 87. And so those are things that he'd have to overcome. But there's some physical things, too, that he needs to overcome. One is that against zone coverage, when you watch Jackson Dart, his anticipation is not very good. He either waits too long and identifies that a receiver is open when he throws against the zone, or often he won't throw it at all. And that's a problem in the NFL. Because, again, zone coverage in the NFL, open looks like this. The play starts, and then he's covered, he's open, he's covered. And you need to throw the ball while he's covered, knowing the spot that it needs to go to before he ever gets there, because you recognize the defense and you know which spot is going to be open. And then you've got to throw that ball with anticipation to that spot. Just to be able to stand in front of a tree and throw a ball through a tire hanging from a rope, or at the combine or at your pro day or whatever, throwing accurately, that's mildly interesting. In the NFL, accuracy is not just where the ball goes. It's when it gets there. And so you've seen quarterbacks in the league that don't have a particularly strong arm, but that anticipate very well, and the ball will arrive on time because they throw it earlier than the guy with a super strong arm. And look at Richardson up in the Colts, Anthony Richardson. Now, he's got an incredibly strong arm, but certainly in college and then in the NFL so far, he hasn't shown the ability to anticipate. So he tries to make up for that by waiting to see what's happening and then throwing the ball with incredible velocity to get it there on time, right? Well, Dart has the arm to be able to make all the throws, but he needs to anticipate, especially against zone, much better than he showed in college. And I would not take him with the 9th pick if I'm the Saints unless I am convinced that he can do that he can process information to the point that he can throw with enough anticipation against NFL coverages that the ball can arrive on time rather than just have him look around and wait to see an open guy and then throw it.
Trevor, what has happened to Luther Burden III, the wide receiver out of Missouri? Coming into the year, a lot of people saw him as a top 5, top 10 pick. Then he fell a little bit. Matthew Golden ran well at the combine. He's flown up the board. Ted McMillan at Arizona ran a 4.55 yesterday in his pro day. He's fallen down the board a little bit. And yet I've seen these mocks that they've got Luther Burden completely out of the first round. And do you think that that is a guy, let's say the Titans draft Cam Ward, that they should be thinking about with the 35th pick?
Luther Burden was an incredible playmaker at Missouri. Early in his career there, he was kind of a gadget guy. He's the guy you do the jet sweep and the bubble screen and things like that. But last year, he really developed into a terrific overall wide receiver. Why he's sliding, I don't know. It may have something to do with the interview process. There may be an injury that hasn't been made public. But I mean, the guy has got pretty good size. I mean, he's 6 feet tall, but 206, and so he's stocky. He ran a 4.40 at the combine. And so he's got the speed. And to me, it's kind of weird that his stock has been falling. I get it if you like other receivers better than him, but I like him. I like him for the Titans because he's got the speed to make the home run play. He can return punts. He's got the skills of a receiver in terms of route running improved dramatically last year. Absolute playmaker.
We talked about the offensive line, and I think we can both agree that by adding Dan Moore Jr. and Kevin Zeitler, they have improved significantly on the offense. Upgrade those skill position spots outside of Ridley and Pollard for Cam Ward.
You know, you would need, if you don't like the tight ends, you would need the security blanket at wide receiver. I mean, that's one of the reasons Nick Westbrook-Akine was so valuable last year, because he could separate, he could make the catch. He was a reliable guy that was a security blanket for the quarterbacks. And right now, the tight end position has not provided that at all for Tennessee. You know, Chig, it kind of disappoints me. I thought he would be a much better threat, a much bigger threat because of his speed. I mean, he's just super fast. But I think he peaked his rookie year. And ever since then, he's kind of gotten a little worse, especially with hanging onto the football. Josh Wiley surprised me. I thought he would be better last year than he was. But I still hold out hope that he could be that security blanket. He's a tall guy. It was very productive in college at the University of Cincinnati. And I think he can be a guy that could still be a guy you can develop a tight end and not have to really stretch and reach for one in the draft. Overall, though, I've got to say that with the offensive line and how they've improved that, and then bringing in Ridley, a receiver sort of as a building block to build around him, whoever plays quarterback next year is going to have a vastly better chance at having success. I mean, if I'm Levis, the last 2 years, I'm furious because he's been labeled as a guy that can't play. He just makes big mistakes. Well, for the last 2 years, he's been the only guy that could make a play a lot of times, and he never had time. I mean, the offensive line, especially not last year but the year before, but from the right tackle position last year as well, the offensive lines that Levis has had to play for, they really should take a group photo and put that photo in the Pro Football Hall of Fame for utter, absolute, abject, horrific play. And all of a sudden now the offensive line all the way across the board, all 5 positions, have snapped into a much better scenario. I mean, a much better scenario. Both tackles now are vastly better because they brought in a free agent at left tackle and moved the left tackle who they drafted last year high in the first round, moved him over to his natural position at right. So now you talk about the skill people, right? I think they need 2 more receivers that are a threat. A guy like Luther Burden could be a guy like that. As a matter of fact, I think he would be a guy like that if they can get him here. But then they would need another guy on top of that because ultimately it's great to have a great offensive line, give the quarterback time to throw. It's great to have a solid running game so play action works. But you still need those guys at receiver who can not only separate and get open and finish a catch, but a guy that can then catch the ball and take off and make a 8-yard slant turn into a 60-yard play. Luther Burden is a guy like that. You need those playmakers. And if they can bring in a couple of young guys to develop, you know, with Ridley as sort of the veteran leader there, I think they have a chance to give the new quarterback a tremendous boost that Will Levis never had in his time as a Titan. And he got labeled for all the problems that were here, even though he did some pretty magnificent things, given that he had almost nothing to work with.
Trevor Mattox, as always, is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics when experience matters. Trevor, great stuff. We'll talk next week.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep. Predators general manager Barry Trotz joins us next from the general manager meetings. So we'll check in on the state of the team and plus the state of the league. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, Bridgestone Arena, Preds, and Blues tonight, 7 o'clock right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And we are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. It is 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, which means we are joined by Predators General Manager Barry Trotz. Now, normally, when we're here on a home game, Barry is with us, but Barry is in Florida right now for the general manager meetings. Barry Trotz, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm fabulous. I will say this. You know, I've been keeping up with the number one pick standings. I know, no tanking, I know. But you guys are kind of still in that mix, you know, around anywhere from 8 to 10%, kind of third best odds, fourth best odds, etc. But you have actually been playing better of late, winning some games. You lost to LA in overtime, 1-0 the other night. Real tough weekend. You said on the show, whether it was last week or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember, you said on the show that you talked about how this team played down the stretch would be very important for you as far as your evaluation of both the players and the coach. So when it comes to that evaluation, what have you seen so far out of the team as they have won some games and played some games close of late?
Well, I think the trip was a good trip. I didn't like our San Jose game in particular, but we found a way to win. And then I thought our Anaheim game, I thought we were played very, very well. Just got out goaltended that night. Their goaltender was really good. We just couldn't find the back of net for a second goal. But I thought we played an outstanding game. And then 22 hours later, went into LA, team that is a really good hockey team, deep hockey team that has only lost 3 home games. And we held them to 9 shots after 48 minutes. And I thought that was a really good job, a high commitment level from our group, and, you know, losing in overtime. But really good effort. I love the fact that we're committed. As I said, it's not necessarily the scores right now. It's the way we're playing. So I think we've had really good commitment. I felt strongly based on that we, you know, with any luck, we could have been 3-0 on that trip, but we ended up 1-1-1. So, you know, a big test tonight. St. Louis is on a heater right now, one of the hottest teams in the National Hockey League, and really trying to get into that 8th spot in our Western Conference. So it'll be a real good test for us tonight.
How much does this stretch down, you know, when you talk about the way that the team plays and happy about the way that they've been playing of late and wanting to get that result tonight, how much of how well the team plays down the stretch will determine your evaluation of Andrew Burnett as the coach?
Well, I think I've been evaluating all year. I think that, you know, if you can get the most of the group that the back end is as depleted as it is without Josie and Lazon and Wilsby and then people like that, Shen, we moved Shen. There's 4 guys that we started the season with, for the most part, that are not in our back end. So, you know, I think it's, you know, how we have to adjust. I've given him different parts, different types of players, and he's adjusted very well. So I just continue to play hard, and we'll evaluate right to the very end.
When it comes to where you sit right now, you know, again, you brought up Yossi being out. We've talked before, and you've talked about seeing specialists. I mean, Yossi's had a lot of concussions, or at least it feels like over the last, 10 years I've been covering the team that Roman Yossi's had a lot of concussions. Is there something maybe as far as the number of concussions and the amount of time that he's missing right now and where he is in his career that may be worrisome, as far as the future is concerned with Roman Josi?
I don't think anything immediately. I think that's probably a question that we will answer and talk about with Roman over the next few years. But I feel right now he's getting some really good treatment, some really good care. We're being very cautious with it. We know where we are. We know how important he is to our franchise. So at this point, I don't have a lot of concerns. But mileage over time that adds up. It's no different. So we'll just monitor it. But we'll be very, very cautious with Roman for the next while here.
I wanted to hit on some of the younger guys because we've talked about the younger guys and them coming up a little bit here and there. And we've seen Fedor Svechkov come into the lineup this year and Zachary LaRue come into the lineup this year. And I do wonder, as much as these guys that have come up from Milwaukee this year and have filled in on defense, whether it was Stasny or Willsby or Delgazzo or Gravel or Blankenberg or whomever, when it comes to kind of core pieces, we've always kind of circled Tanner Mullendijk, and I know he played for Canada in the World Juniors. Are you starting to piece together the plan for next year? And if so, is Mullendijk a part of the NHL plan for the next season?
Well, I think it's too soon to answer that. I would say that I'm planning to have a guy like Tanner Mullendijk to be a part of our young core. To say that he's going to be on our team or that, I think that's very premature. There's a lot of runway from now till next year. He's heading into his junior career. Ending his junior career, he's playing Medicine Hat. He's on a very good team. He's hoping to win a Memorial Cup, so he could play till June, and then we'll just see. But one step at a time. Let's make sure that he finishes his junior career. I'm hoping that the way he's played, the way he's developed, that he will be a part of our young core. That's the key to me. Is we have to build our young core. You look at the top teams in the National Hockey League. Their young core came up either drafted or acquired somehow, and then they supplemented. They grew up together. There's something about a group that grows up together. So our young core, right now our core is a little bit older. It's Roman Josi, it's Saros, it's Forsberg, it's Stamkos, it's those guys that are more of our core. But we need to develop the young core, and once that's been our focus all along. That we got to develop it and supplement it with the older core right now, and then have a little bit of a blend. So that's going to continue, but we have to continue to develop and figure out what our young core is, and hopefully Zach is going to be part of our young core. That's part of our young core. And Mullendijk and Edström, and those guys are going to be our young core, but we just need time. And there's, I can't make it happen any quicker. No one can. It's just something that you have to go through the process, and that's part of development.
Barry, this may not be a good thing. Barry Trotz with us on the program, and I know you're trying to win every game, but I have been kind of looking at the Canadian websites, where they spell center with the R-E instead of the E-R, and I've been kind of following these draft prospects, and there's a couple of forwards. We talk about this all the time, about how you end up getting the McDavids and the McKinnons and the Crosbys and we know how you get them. Every now and then there's a Sebastian Aho or a Jason Robertson but we know how you get them. When it comes to this year, there's the Hagens kid at BC. There's the Misa kid, I believe, from Canada. When you see them, do you see a franchise-altering center in your evaluation of those prospects?
Well, I think it's almost too early. There's no Crosby or there's no McDavid. I will say that that's mostly probably the general consensus. But they are good players. They're top players, and you look at some of the players that are top players in the National Hockey League now. They were either franchise players or top players that have become franchise players. So I think there's a few out there, and hopefully we get one.
Barry Trotz with us on the program at the GM meetings. So at the GM meetings, is there anything interesting that would be worth discussing, or is it more, I was kind of trying to follow what was coming out of there. And the big thing for me is I think the playoff format is stupid. I think that the worst team should play the best team. And I think the division stuff, again, I think that's stupid, but that's apparently a board of governors discussion. That's not a GM's discussion. And then the GM discussions from what I've seen are about video replay and throat guards. And I mean, not to say that I don't care about throat guards, but I really don't care about throat guards. What's been kind of the discussion from your end at the general manager meetings?
Well, you're correct. I mean, when it comes to altering some things that are more CBA issues, that's more governors. In terms of the game, the stewardship of the game, that's more the GM. So, we're looking at all the correct video review so that we're all on the same page. It's player safety. I saw, Tommy Fitzgerald's son, get cut in the throat, and if you saw the cut, you might not be able to look at player safety again because it was so close to being fatal. So we're looking at more of the stewardship of the game, trying to improve that. we're trying to get direction in terms of the new format with the draft. Obviously, it's not centralized this year, and also you look at the new rules in the NCAA. We're trying to get some direction and clarity at that from the league, and so we're looking at all those things, trying to make our game better, safer for our players, better for our fans, all those things. So that's part of our part as general managers is what can we do to make it better for our fans, safer for our players, and get it right. As we get close to the playoffs, we want to get all the calls right. We want interpretations to be right and clear, not only for the coaches and the players, but also the video coaches who a lot of times have to make some of those calls. So that has been I would say the crux of the agenda. And then obviously the release that we're going over to, we're one of the two teams that are going over to Sweden for the Global Series next year in November, which falls in the CMA week. So we're excited about that.
I heard the Stillman and Company program is going as well, from what I've been told. I don't know where that came from, though. Barry Trotz with us, as always. Barry, I'm going to be honest. Sounds like the GM meetings, well, it's probably pretty cool to be at the GM meetings. Probably sounds kind of boring like everybody else's job, where it's like, yeah, we got meetings and seminars and everything else, and then, we get some bite to eat here, and then it's back to meetings and seminars. So back to the meetings and seminars you go, and we will talk soon.
All right, talk soon.
Yep, Barry Trotz joining us on the program. So I saw that today. I saw that the Predators are headed to Sweden to play the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I heard in my own head that the Stillman and Company program was going to be on their way to Sweden next year for the radio show, which we're very, very excited about. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025. There is a draft conundrum that I feel like the Titans have. I have it. It is giving me anxiety, and it's got almost nothing to do with the number one pick. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, live from Bridgestone Arena, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
think that they're being very diligent and thorough in their approach, and they want to do a lot of work before they make a decision. It certainly sounds like if they stay at one, that Cam Ward would be the number one pick, and if a team traded up, Cam Ward would be the number one pick. So it's going to be up to Tennessee and the new general manager, Mike Bornganzi, to decide here. Are they better off? Do they believe enough in Cam Ward to stay there at one and pick their quarterback of the future? Or are they better off dangling that pick, getting back a boatload of draft pick compensation in return, and basically punting on getting your quarterback of the future until another year?
That was Adam Schefter, and he was talking about, hey, the Titans, they look like they're going to take Cam Ward. It quacks like they're going to take Cam Ward. It feels like they're going to take Cam Ward, but they're not for sure yet going to take Cam Ward. It's either Cam Ward or trade, and they could get all those draft choices. But because I don't have any idea what the Titans would do at quarterback if they don't draft Cam Ward, I'm kind of the mindset that that decision is made. It's funny. I saw somebody in the YouTube chat when I was talking about, hey, what if Cam Ward ends up being Kyler Murray? You people out there that think he's going to be Mahomes, you people will be upset and depressed that he's not a superstar, but he won't ever be bad enough for you to ever win or, get rid of him. So you're stuck with Kyler forever. And people were like, well, you wanted Sam Darnold, and that's what Sam Darnold is. I wanted Sam Darnold for money. Just money. Not for the number one pick. If it was like, hey, you have to trade the number one pick for Sam Darnold, I would have said, no, we're not doing that. So let's be very clear when it comes to that. But I think they're going to take Cam Ward because Darnold's off the table. Geno Smith's off the table. I don't think they're going to pull the, okey doke, the rope-a-dope, and they're going to surprise us and all of a sudden take Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart. I just don't buy it. So I think they're taking Cam Ward number one. And it should be noted that Mel Kiper Jr. today put out his mock draft. Daniel Jeremiah, the lead NFL Network draft analyst, put out his mock draft. And both guys have the Titans drafting Cam Ward number one overall. Again, not a surprise. But what is starting to give me a little anxiety is what are the Titans going to do at pick number 35? And maybe I'm just a little more ahead of the game. 2 weeks ago, Kaharski went on Robbie and Rex Road and said they're not interested in Sam Darnold. And I said that day, congratulations to Cam Ward. At that point, it was over. Cam Ward was the guy. And for some reason, over the last 2 weeks, there's still been some chatter about, well, wait a minute. What about trading back, Jared? They're not trading back. They need a quarterback. Well, what about Will Levis on the team next year? No, Will Levis is not going to be on the team. We were talking about these backup quarterbacks, and we were talking about Jameis Winston, and we were talking about this guy. And I'm like, no, they're going to go get a Scarbini backup for a young quarterback, and they went out and signed Brandon Allen. So now people are starting to finally come around to the idea that, A, they're going to take Cam Ward, and B, Levis is not going to be on the team. So now I am moving to C. And I don't know if collectively we're ready to get there or not, but I'm going there. And C for me is, what are they going to do with the 35th pick? TD has talked on this program about that's where they could trade back. Again, they want a top 100 pick. They want more top 100 picks. They've said it. They want, 12 over the next 3 years and 30 picks over the next 10 years. And so if you're not going to trade number one, then they are going to have to trade 35 to get more draft capital, supposedly. But I get a little bit of anxiety from that because I see Mel Kiper's mock draft and I don't see Luther Burden the third in there. And I'm like, well, if you're picking third in the second round, you could get Luther Burden. And if you are drafting Cam Ward and the best receivers you've got, the best receivers you have are Calvin Ridley and Van Jefferson, Luther Burden probably helps out. But if you draft Luther Burden, what are you doing on defense? Because your defense that sucked last year, I don't care that they were ranked second in the NFL in total yards. Every single other stat they were bad in. This was because Will Levis and the special teams gave up too many short fields. So the defense was bad last year. Their leading sacker, Harold Landry, is on the Patriots. And their leading tackler, Kenneth Murray, is on the Cowboys. And it's not like they brought in some guys, dependable guys, but they haven't brought in any premium impact talent. So how do you do that? You don't have a pick in the third round because you stupidly got excited about L'Jarius Sneed's bum knees. What do you do? Do you trade it back? Do you go defense? Do you go offense? And this is where I'm starting to worry. And here's why I feel like trading 35 isn't as sexy as it sounds. Last year, trades involving second round picks that did not involve a first. So for instance, like Carolina for instance, I want to say like Chicago got Carolina second because of the Caleb, forget about that. New England at 34 traded to 37 in the draft. They traded a second and a fifth for a second and a fourth. So that would be like trading, your sixth rounder and getting a fifth rounder. That again's not a top 100 pick. The Giants traded 39 to Carolina for Brian Burns. Carolina traded 39 to the Rams for 52, 155, and a second rounder next year. Now, supposedly that was never offered by the Rams to the Titans for the one pick before that was Devondre Sweat. I actually now believe that as much as I crushed him, but keep that in mind. Washington traded 40th, 78, and 152 for 50 and 53. So they had to include a third in order to get 2 seconds. Point being, there's just not a lot of draft capital, in my opinion, to be gained by trading back in the second round. So then how are they going to get all the picks? And this is where I think it's very hard for you to be able to have your cake and eat it too. For you to be able to draft Cam Ward, for you to be able to put a team around Cam Ward for where he can be successful, and gain the draft capital that you said when you hired this general manager you needed in order to build the team. I think it's very hard for the Titans to accomplish all three things, which again is why I would have paid Sam Darnold money and then traded the pick. But that's the thing I'm starting to get a little anxiety from is where are you going to get your draft capital from? How are you going to rebuild your defense, which you need to rebuild? You got no premium talent outside of maybe Simmons. No premium talent on defense. So how do you do it? And then how do you get that extra weapon, whether it's a tight end, whether it's a wide, where do you get that extra weapon for Cam Ward? You can't have it. You cannot take Luther Burden at 35 and trade the pick. You cannot take an edge rusher at 35 and trade the pick. You cannot rely on fourth round guys popping as stars. It's not how you build your team in the NFL. Yes, it will happen occasionally, but it is not the rule. It is the exception. 615-737-1025 is our phone number on the program. There is something that just makes absolutely no sense. No sense. And I'm not here to crap on this team or this coach, but the narrative that's starting to come out, we got to discuss. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Appreciate that, Elliot. I want to thank Robert and Jonathan's not able to be here today, but I want to thank them on behalf of just the coaching staff. I think the personnel, and echo Elliot's comments just about the support and the commitment that they've made just in getting this process and this just being able to build a program every single day and allowing us to have the resources that we've needed to do that, to provide our players with everything that they need to be successful on and off the field. So thank you. Thank you, Robert. I want to thank Elliot. I want to thank his personnel department, specifically the pro scouts and that staff that really teed it up for me and the coaches to come in and evaluate as we work through the personnel, stage and the preliminary stages of that. So, I thought they did a great job. I want to thank them. Would love to thank Nancy Meyer and Stretch for kind of coordinating everything. Everything moves pretty quick, and they kept us in line, and they kept us. They handled travel and just the communication and getting everybody here. So I want to thank them. Would love to thank Richie and Mitch and Hallie, who are going to form our player engagement department, and have been able to just meet with these families and visit and help this transition that, there's going to be some new players here. There's going to be some new faces here, and that department is critical, and we want to support them.
The great Mike Vrabel. And I got to say, what award did Mike Vrabel win? I mean, that sounded like they got to start running the music behind Mike Vrabel with that, and I want to thank everybody. By the way, isn't it great to hear them, whether it's Brian Cowden or Stretch or all the guys that we, the bozos that we had to deal with for so long. Though I do like Cowden, but the bozos, the Vrabel cronies, and now it's like, they're doing something else. What did Mike Vrabel win? That was an acceptance speech for a major award, and the Academy Award for biggest crybaby and bitching of the 2023 season goes to Mike Vrabel. Oh, yes, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Stretch. I want to thank Robert Kraft. I want to thank Elliot. I want to thank the scouts, the personnel staff. What did he win? The answer, free agency. Dun, 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 dun. This from The Athletic. And The Athletic, they're not the only ones. Winners and losers of free agency. Winner, Mike Vrabel and the Patriots. Quote, the Patriots operated with a talent-deficient roster in 2024. New coach Mike Vrabel made it clear that the team's cap space had to be put to good use and that his version of the Patriot way will begin with defense. The front office went out and got defensive lineman Milton Williams, pass rushers Harold Landry and Kaylavon Chason, corner Carlton Davis, and linebacker Robert Spillane to highlight a dramatic defensive makeover. Winners. Chad Withrow was on the program Friday, and Chad was like, on Thursday, and Chad was like, I really see a plan with what Vrabel's doing. I'm like, what? What? Winners in free agency for overpaying Harold Landry? Again, let's go through these names. Defensive lineman Milton Williams. You know what's crazy? The Eagles played how many primetime or 325 games this year? Games I would have watched. Chase, off the top of your head, how many Eagle games do you think I watched this year just because they were on? One? Well, I mean, I obviously watched like the Super Bowl and the NFC title game and the playoffs and they played they played 4 playoff games. Plus, every time they played Dallas, that's a national game. They played the Rams on Sunday Night Football. I mean, I'm guessing I probably watched like 8 Eagle games this year. Do you know what's crazy? Until the Super Bowl, I'd never heard of Milton Williams. I know Jalen Carter. I knew Josh Sweat. I knew Brandon Graham. I knew Milton Williams. This is the difference maker? Milton Williams? Again, Harold Landry, and I like Harold Landry, is 9 sacks last year, but it's not like Harold Landry is worth $14.5 million. I heard them talking on Felger and Maz on Boston radio, and they were like, man, every highlight we see on TV of Harold Landry is Harold Landry getting to the quarterback when he's unblocked. I'm like, were there a lot of sacks like that last year? Wouldn't surprise me. Again, I like Landry, but his days of being a difference maker are done. Robert Spillane is an average inside backer, dime a dozen. Callahan Chason. When's the last time you heard that name? I remember all the talk we had about Callahan Chason when he was coming out as a potential prospect the Titans could draft. Since the day he was drafted, I have not heard of Callahan Chason. But this is what narrative season is in the NFL. There is a big difference between reality and what makes you feel better or what the media believes. The media and everybody, every time Mike Vrabel does something, it's like, this is a great move. A great move from the great Mike Vrabel. In free agency, did the Patriots add a single impact player? Maybe Milton Williams. Maybe. And again, I barely even know who that is. Yet look at their team. They have no wide receivers for their young quarterback. They went into this with all this quote unquote cap space, thinking they were going to get T. Higgins. They didn't. They got Harold Landry. They have no left tackle. So you've got a young quarterback and you've got no receivers and no left tackle. They got a Band-Aid right tackle, and I like Morgan Moses, but like there's a difference between, I like him on the team and he'd fit in, and man, we got to sign him, and that's a difference maker. They cut the veteran center they had, which it's too bad Aaron Brewer's not a free agent. Maybe Vrabel will trade the 4th overall pick to get him in there. It's tougher than a $2 steak from what I've been told. And yet, I keep hearing people talk about, look at the job that the great Mike Vrabel has done. And here's another thing. What is Vrabel doing? Holding a press conference to celebrate signing guys in free agency. That's what losers do. And Mike Vrabel's smart enough to know that. He didn't call that press conference. Robert Kraft spoke at the press conference. And Robert Kraft was like, they tell me not to get too excited, but it's hard. And I'm like, when you signed Harold Landry, like the crappy Titans didn't want Harold Landry anymore, and you signed him for basically the same money, and your Robert Kraft can't control himself? I mean, boy, I was about to say something so inappropriate there, and I'm not going to. But I thought about it. So, I can't wait for the games to be played. Because everybody seemed to think the great Mike Vrabel's on his way, and the hillbillies in Tennessee had no idea what they're doing when they fired him. And Vrabel was just as culpable as Rand Carthon for all the screw-ups around here. Just as culpable. Vrabel. I can't wait. Let's play some games. Let's play some ball. But again, winning free agency and Vrabel getting up there, holding a press conference and patting everybody on the tush. Again, thank you, Elliott. Thank you, pro scouts. Thank you, coaches. Thank you, Stretch. Thank you, our director of player development. Thank you. Thank you. That is not Vrabel. Vrabel couldn't even kiss the owner's ass enough here to say, when I asked him about those, it's not like this everywhere, trust me comments, Vrabel couldn't say, no, I was just talking about the Super Bowls they won there, but this is a great place. Amy's a great owner. This is a great place to be, and I love being a Titan. Vrabel could not say that. The great Mike Vrabel. So again, let's play the games. And let's see who's right and who's wrong. But maybe get a left tackle. And then we can talk about the Patriots doing something positive. Maybe get a wide receiver. And then we can talk about the Patriots doing something positive. Unbelievable. One texter says, Dustin and Nashville, phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One texter says, what changed with your opinion about the Rams trading for the 2nd round pick last year? So I saw the video that the Rams put out where the Rams were offering a second in next year's draft to move up. And it then showed Les Snead telling Sean McVay, yeah, they say they don't want to go up that high, which only made sense that it would be the Titans they were talking to. And I was told it's not the Titans. Now, I talked to somebody who said that they definitely tried to make that offer to the Titans, but then I saw what I would consider to be proof that the Rams did not offer that and that Ran Carthon did not turn that down. So I am not going to put that on Ran Carthon. And if there was anything that I would apologize to Ran Carthon for over the last 2 years, it's that. It's that I believe that they may have not been offered that package. And I think I have to leave it at that. One texter says the Titans will not draft Cam Ward number 1. Well, if they don't draft him number 1, they don't have a quarterback. If they don't have a quarterback, they're not going to be any good. And I don't care who you sign in free agency, just like, again, Vrabel signing Harold Landry and Robert Spillane to contracts, and he's free agent of the year, but they don't have a left tackle. I mean, you have to have a quarterback. And so if you're not going to sign Sam Darnold, if you're not interested in these other ones, like, it is what it is. Matt says, could you please play every bite next year when Vrabel says, got to coach better, got to play better? Let me tell you, I thought this was hilarious. So I actually listened to Boston radio on Thursday after this press conference, and it was so funny listening to them kind of break down like what's going on with Vrabel. For instance, center David Andrews, a veteran player, he got released, and they were trying to figure out, Vrabel got asked about it. Vrabel got defensive and kind of, penisy-ish about it. I could say that, right? Yeah, I mean, he got a little Vrabel about it. And so, and they were like, why did Vrabel have to get so passive aggressive? And why do you have to? I'm like, that's Vrabel. They're talking about, well, who's really in charge here? And how much say does Stretch have? And how much? We've done this. We've been there and through this. And then they play the press conference cuts. And so many of those cuts are so many Vrabel one-liners. It would make you guys sick. Like they cut David Andrews, the veteran center who was a captain when Tom Brady was there winning Super Bowls. And Vrabel was like, well, anybody can be a leader on this team. It doesn't matter how long you've played in the league. It doesn't matter what position. It doesn't matter. Every single person that walks in this building can lead in their own way, player or coach. I'm like, I've heard that 1,000 times. So maybe we do need to do some of that. But Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson, Homes of Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. That's my realtor. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ Anderson, Homes of Benchmark Realty. The St. Louis Blues are on a heater. As Barry Trotz said, they've won 2 in a row, including beating Anaheim 7-2 in their last outing. They're 33-28-7. That's good for 73 points. The Predators 25-33-8. That's good for 58 points. The Predators lost in overtime at the Kings and have lost 2 in a row and maintain about an 8.5% chance, according to MoneyPuck.com, of ending up with the number 1 overall pick. Is Jordan Binnington in net tonight for St. Louis? He is not in net tonight for St. Louis. That's bad news. I was kind of hoping he'd be in net, and then that way maybe St. Louis would pull one out, because at this point, I've seen that the Flyers have jumped the Predators as far as bad records are concerned. And we've got to walk away from this godforsaken season with a positive, and a high draft choice inside the top 3 is the positive that we are looking for. So Chase has the pregame coming up next, and I know this because Willie said today that Chris Mason and Max are recording something for some animated game down the road. So Chase is in for Max on the pregame. Robbie Stanley will be here. And, of course, Puck drop 7 o'clock with the voice of the Predators, Pete Weber, right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. That's it for us. Stillman & Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.